the story of the Tour de France.
Welcome to the following presentation of the Tour de France on NBCSN, the 24/7 NBC Sports Network.
Just moments ago in the northeast corner of the island of Corsica, the peloton rolling away to the roar of the crowd. And after yesterday's finish, these may be some of the bravest men in all of France. It's 97 miles from Bastia to Ajaccio. And on the front, Marcel Kittel of Argo Shimano is wearing the yellow.
This is going to be a very special Tour de France.
Yesterday, less than 3 miles from the finish line, the peloton wound up for a final charge. Cavendish, Greipel, and Sagan. Speed merchants put in position, loaded for the finish. But in 100 tours, nobody ever expected this. A bus stuck under the finish line clock, and just minutes till the riders cross the line. The tempo ramps, the fast fiber twitchy, and then chaos.
Oh, the crash. Oh, a massive pileup. Cavendish is involved in this one.
Sagan is there as well. The big contenders have gone down.
The day's favorites taken down in an instant.
It is going to be on the line. Marcel Kittel gets the victory.
Many of the men lucky enough to face the narrow roads and rugged terrain of day 2 have made it here damaged. A price paid in a tour that isn't won so much as it is survived.
The port city of Ajaccio is the destination for all 198 riders in the field of the 100th Tour de France. Today, the sprinters could have the final say, but first, there are some serious climbs along the way. Hello, everyone. I'm Todd Harris, and we welcome you to Tour de France Live, presented by Cadillac. Ajaccio on the southwest coast of Corsica, as we are now 132 miles closer to Paris on what has already been a chaotic tour. As we take a look at the Michelob Ultra standings, after stage 1, it's Argo Shimano sprinter Marcel Kittel who avoided the catastrophe on the run into Bastia, and he is now in yellow. Alongside the best lead-out man in the business, Bob Roll, I'll tell you what, this is the 100th edition of this great race, and what a way to start it.
Well, the last time the Tour de France has started with a pancake flat stage was 1966. The sprint stages are always madness. However, this year we started the Tour de France with the sprint stage, and when you dangle the yellow jersey in front of the eyes of the sprinters, pandemonium ensues.
Perfect word for the day was madness as we take a look at the highlights from stage number 1, and it really got started about 25-30 miles out, but this was the scene at the finish line. Orica Green Edge bus arrives late after getting lost. They're told go ahead and pass on through. They'd already lowered the timing banner. The driver's reaction says it all. He is stuck. And now, with the peloton bearing down at 35 to 40 miles per hour, we've got ourselves a problem. Miraculously, they extract the bus as the riders are entering the outskirts of Bastia, but still more problems out on the road, Bob. No one was safe from the crash bug.
A vicious battle for position is a part of the sprint stages in the Tour de France. You always have to pay attention. That's Johnny Hoogerland, so unlucky a couple of years ago. Bad luck continuing to dog him. He's trying to set a record for stitches in the Tour de France. Another crash here on the left-hand side of the road just a few kilometers later.
And this was the big one. With less than 5 miles to go to the finish line, Andre Greipel tries a tricky maneuver, and it sets off this.
Andre Greipel following his lead out. He's behind his teammates. However, the road is narrowing, and riders are getting closer and closer to him. For a sprinter, the number one job before the line is to forsake the brakes. Andre Greipel not wanting to brake. Tony Martin on his right-hand shoulder is doing the lead out for Mark Cavendish. Andre Greipel touches the handlebar right here of Tony Martin. Tony Martin going down, cartwheeling down the tarmac there through no fault of his own, right on his wheel. Peter Sagan. Peter Sagan, no way he can stop. Peter Sagan goes over the bars as well. Mark Cavendish, he doesn't fall down, but he's delayed by the big pile of bodies just in front of him. He was lucky not to crash, but he did not take part in the sprint.
Andre Greipel didn't hit the deck, but he did lose a chain and a derailleur, so he had to wait for a new bike to come through. Peter Sagan, what a tough man. He goes down, left a lot of tissue and blood on the ground, but he would finish. And what a finish we had. Leave it to one sprinter. Keep an eye on the right side of your screen. The man in the all-white kit from Shimano Argus getting it done.
This is Marcel Kittel, lucky enough to be on the right-hand side of the road before the sprint. No luck here ever whatsoever involved with winning this sprint. Alexander Kristoff in red goes for the line, but nobody is quick. As Marcel Kittel on stage number 1, he would inherit the first yellow jersey because of winning the stage also.
So from Argos Shimano white to Maillot jaune yellow, Marcel Kittel of Germany, the first man to wear the yellow jersey here in the 100th edition of the Tour de France. Afterwards, it was jubilation for him and his team as they avoided all the problems. But for the others, not so much. Alberto Contador came home with a damaged jersey. He took it on the left shoulder. And the man that may have got the worst of it, the pictures say it all. Tony Martin, road rash complete, left shoulder injury with a whole bunch of other situations. He was taken to hospital. X-rays came back negative. He will be a very sore man. In total, 15 riders went for medical treatment. Here are just a few of them. Tony Martin, the American, Ted King, Ian Standard was there, Johnny Hoogerlin, who we saw, and I think you appropriately said the man trying to collect the most stitches in Tour de France history. An absolute carnage in the last 5 miles of the first stage of the Tour de France. Well, moments ago, they were leaving Bastia, and now they are on the outskirts. And as soon as they get out of this town, Bob, it's a wicked climb. And so all those aches and pains will be magnified. As we said, Tony Martin did start, and no one seems to be in a hurry to make a break. Ted King, the American, who also was treated for an injury, is in the peloton off and riding. So we are 198 riders complete as they begin the tour out of Bastia. Well, the big story yesterday, unfortunately, was the Orica Greenhead bus and the disaster that happened at the finish line. It was averted, but for more on that, we check in with Carolyn Mano.
We know a lot more now about what happened at the finish line yesterday with the Orica Green Edge bus that caused so much chaos. The bus actually went to the team hotel at the finish, thinking that that would be easier for the riders before they arrived, and changed their mind at the very last minute. So the bus pulled up about 15 minutes before the riders came through. Now, the issue with that was obvious. The banner had been put down at the finish line. It's normally raised so that the buses can get through, and it goes down about 3 hours before the riders finish. Wasn't the case yesterday. I did see the bus driver and was told that he's in much better spirits than he was after the race. He does have no air conditioning, which is what happened when that crash happened, but they're hoping to get that fixed within the next couple days or make a change to the bus.
So a little bit of damage to the Pride. Bob, the air conditioner out, that could be an issue, but here we are in the neutral start as they are making their way out of Bastia. And how quick do you think people are going to start feeling a little frisky?
I think right when the flag drops to initiate the proceedings, this is the fictitious or the neutral start, but they will wave the flag. The race director in the red car leading the peloton. I believe the moment that will happen, we see it every year in the Tour de France, the attacks begin. We'll see what happens today.
Well, it's a beautiful day in Corsica. When we come back, we will check in with the men calling it, Phil and Paul. Plus, we'll get an update for Ted King on Team Cannondale. You're watching the 100th Tour de France on NBCSN. Tour de France Live on NBCSN is brought to you by Cadillac, the new standard of the world.
We're headed the same way, right?
Yeah.
After you.
It's all in how you get there. The SRX from Cadillac, awarded Best Interior Design of any luxury brand. Lease this 2013 Cadillac SRX for around $399 per month with premium care maintenance included.
The 100th edition. This is going to be a very, very special Tour de France. The Orlick bus has hit the finishing gantry.
Oh, there's a crash. There's a crash gone down.
The bus is backing off the finishing line. Now what will they do?
Oh, the crash.
Oh, a massive pile-up. Cavendish is involved in this one.
Sagan is there as well. The big contenders have gone down.
It is going to be on the line. Marcel Kittel gets the victory, and he gets a yellow jersey.
That was probably one of the most chaotic Tour de France stages I've ever seen.
An amazing start to the 100th edition of the greatest event in cycling, the Tour de France. Well, two men who have suffered their fair share of road rash, Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin, we check in with them.
Yes, Todd, you know, people have always asked me, why do I keep returning to the Tour de France year in, year out? And the answer I always give is because you never see the same event twice. And yesterday, yes, we always get the crashes on the opening stage of the Tour, but we don't often get a bus done under a gantry, do we?
That's the first time I've ever seen anything like that. And I think, in fact, it was the bus that created the chaos in the background, because with the information coming over the riders' race radios, the finish is going to be at 3 kilometres to go. No, it isn't. Guys were taking crazy risks because they knew at the end of the day, not only was there a stage victory at hand, but also a yellow jersey, a chance in a lifetime.
Indeed. Well, today a totally different stage. We're now into the centre of Corsica here. Let's have a look at the Geico stage map. And this, Paul, a very different race today.
Totally different. We start right up in the northern part of the island of Corsica and head inland. Now, when you head inland into Corsica, you go over some rather large mountains. They go down through the very important port, the town of Corte, before heading down into the finishing town of Ajaccio, which is the capital town here in Corsica. But really, Phil, it's more about the profile on today's stage, and we really don't know how it's going to feed out, but it depends how the riders hit these climbs. Look at that in the middle, almost at 4,000 feet in climbing before they charge down into the finish line. And that nasty little climb towards the end may well be a little bit of a demise for the sprinters.
Well, you know, in the race book, which the riders read, it says that last climb is 8.9% in gradient. Now, we've spoken to 3 riders who've gone and looked at that climb, and they say it's 18%. That's a big difference, and that could spoil it for the sprinters, Todd.
Very much, gentlemen. We look forward to your call. Here we are out on the road, live pictures, and wow. Wasting no time, Bob. You called it.
They drop the flag. The riders attack. It looks like the Europa car team is on the tack. And watch for the French teams to try to make the early breakaway on today's stage. This is what they're going to ride through in just a little bit of time.
Absolutely perfect weather conditions today. And we can tell you, after our drive through that same area last night, the temperatures will drop some 10 to 15 degrees. Is this wise, or is this just a way to see who's got what in the tank?
It'll be a very interesting stage, not purely for the sprinters, not a GC day, a day that a breakaway might be able to succeed. Also a day that if the sprinters can't stay in the field, they have a chance for the sprint. Anything can happen on today's stage. It's going to be very exciting. Narrow roads, very twisting terrain, and a lot of big climbs out on the course.
And remember, the nerves are still a little bit frayed from yesterday's action. 15 riders going for medical treatment. One of the men that had to go to medical treatment was American Ted King, who rides for Cannondale. Riding in his very first Tour de France, he goes down on stage number 1. Earlier today, our Carolyn Mano caught up with a young American.
Can you take us through what you went through yesterday and tell us how you're feeling?
Something of an emotional roller coaster. Yeah, you know, I mean, feeling good throughout the day. Coming in towards the finale, obviously the pace is picking up. It's getting pretty chaotic. Narrow road, and there was a gutter on the left. 3 guys went down in front of me, and I ended up flying straight over them. So finished the stage, a lot of adrenaline. Ended up in the hospital, took a whole bunch of scans, nothing's fractured, so that's a good thing. And now we take it one day at a time, see how the day goes.
How's your teammate, Peter, doing?
Peter's good. I mean, yeah, he lost some skin too, but he's, you know, he's in a good mood. He's smiling, he's laughing, he's joking. He's in a good place.
Today's stage seems like one that would be tailor-made for Peter. Given the circumstances, what is the strategy for you guys today? Has it changed at all?
No, I mean, you'll probably see me doing a little bit less work. I mean, I'm trying to find the finish line. But, yeah, I mean, the stage really is, it's awesome for Peter. So, you know, the team's strong, he's strong. I think, yeah, he lost a little bit of skin, but he'll be okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ted King, the 30-year-old from Exeter, New Hampshire. There is the elbow that took the brunt of his fall. Also the left shoulder. He had to visit the doctor as well. They cleared him. Back to live pictures on the road. And 4 guys off the front. No surprises here. Rider from Euskaltel out there. But they are making quick work of this advantage. Again, Belkin involved as they were yesterday. AG2R and Europa Carb. You know, we rode this yesterday in a car. Do you anticipate lots of attacks?
Oh, well, to find the early breakaway, I think it might be very difficult because there's a chance the breakaway can succeed. 2 more riders trying to break away from the field, but the field right behind all the men are just off the front. The stage sets up perfect for a man like Peter Sagan. It's a custom tailored to his talents. If all the other sprinters don't make it over the climbs, Peter Sagan is a very good climber. Not quite the best of the best, but solid in those medium type of mountains, and he has an incredible kick to the finish line. We saw him win 3 stages in sprints last year, and so today would be theoretically a great chance for the man from Canada.
And for you boys with a touch of gray, take inspiration in this. 41-year-old Jens Voigt, father of 6, trying to make something happen there, and it just wasn't happening today, Bob.
The peloton is not sure about the breakaway, and they gobbled up Jens Voigt. You do not want to chase Jens Voigt throughout the day. Here's the breakaway. Ruben Perez, David Villeneuve from Canada, Biel Cadre, and Lars Boom from yesterday also still feeling frisky.
Lars Boom making it happen. Want to remind you to keep up with the Tour de France. You need the most advanced digital experience of its kind. Now for a limited time, get Tour de France Live on your desktop for only $29.99. It's available now on NBCSports.com/TDF Live. We'll be back with live call from Phil and Paul when we return to Corsica. You're watching the 100th Tour de France.
NBC's coverage of Stage 2 is presented by Competitive Cyclist, your source for pro-caliber bicycles, apparel and accessories. Fuel your passion at competitivecyclist.com. And let's get straight down to today's weather report presented by Palmer's Cocoa Butter Formula for Men. There it is, a wonderful 78 degrees, light winds and sunny all the way to Ajaccio today for the riders in the Tour de France. Well, as we've seen already, they have got off to the anticipated quick start. 4 men have opened the gap. Biel Cadre is one of them, Ruben Perez, David Villeneuve and Lars Bohm. And those 4 men, Bohm, by the way, Paul, was in the move yesterday.
Well, in fact, the CEO of Belkin is on the Tour de France, and he did not know what to expect. He's come into the Tour de France to sponsor this team, which previously in the early part of the season was Team Blanco. It comes off the history of being Team Rabobank, and he was blown away by the number of people at the side of the road and the fact that his team got into the breakaway on the first day. And look at this, with the same man, they're in the breakaway on the second day.
Well, we often refer to it as the early morning breakaway. This is the early afternoon breakaway today because we have turned approaching 2 o'clock local time now. The riders on a shorter stage today of just under 100 miles. The crowd's enormous as we say goodbye to Bastia, scene of all the controversy yesterday. We're on the road, in fact, the riders racing on the left of our picture coming the other way where the crashes occurred as they approached the finish, and we're not far off to our left where the bus was stuck under the gantry. These 4 boys just nosing out a little bit. 1 or 2 chasers here. This is one of them here from the Société team, and this is Julien Simon.
Well, he's caught halfway across the gap. This is a terrible place to be. It's no man's land. You're halfway across the gap, which is already stretched out to the 2-minute margin, and I don't think he's actually going to make the junction because you need an awful lot of impetus to get across a gap like that, especially when the breakaway is starting to form in the early part of the race. But today's stage, Phil, is completely different to yesterday's stage because we're going right over the backbone of the island of Corsica, and we climb up to up to almost 4,000 feet in climbing, and that's why I think there's a little bit of calm in the main field after the nervousness of yesterday. I think there's a lot of discussion going on. How lucky was I? How badly injured are you? But once we start to get to the climb, we'll see the tempos start to change.
Well, it is a beautiful day. The riders are on a wide carriageway here and will remain so for a few kilometres before we turn right, and then we go over into the hills. Well, let's have a look then at our time now for our daily Cadillac performance predictions. This is the standings. Paul Sherwin was the only one left standing yesterday. Phil, Bob and Scott saw their riders hit the dust. Greipel left for a new set of gears. So Team GB, which is Liggett and Sherwin, 4 points. Thanks, Paul. And the USA, unlucky, I think. 0 points for them. Let's have a look on today's picks. Well, I've gone for Peter Sagan. And I think of the sprinters, he's about the only one who's going to survive the run into the finish today. Andre Greipel for Paul, John Degenkolb for Bob, and Mark Cavendish for Scott. But it is, I have to tell you, that little hill before the end might get rid of Greipel, Degenkolb and Cavendish. Sagan has shown us in the past he can get over these short climbs. Cheers all the way. Well, as always, our Steve Perino is down on his motorbike, riding with the backs of the riders, and he's on our TireRack.com inside the race. So let's have a report from Steve. Morning, Steve, or is it afternoon?
I think it's morning right now, Phil. And I got a little story for you with regard to all the mess that we've had into the crashes. I talked to a man, his name is Dr. Bruce Gottlieb, who has done quite a bit of research into the effects of crashing. He is a psychotherapist. And we all know about the physical ailments that go along with road rash, concussions, and whatnot. And we know about the psychological trauma of what it's like to get back up on your bike. But what he has taken a step further into looking into is actually the neuromuscular issues that happen. And basically his theory is that once a rider crashes, his likelihood of crashing again actually goes up, because what happens is that you disrupt the fine motor skills that these guys have all established over the years. You break it up, and so the next time you go out on the bike, you don't have that very high proprioception on the bike to keep you upright. He actually has a very long theory about what it takes to get back on the bike properly so that you don't do it again. But basically the point is, once you crash once on your bike, unless you know his ways, the next time you're up on the bike, the likelihood of crashing goes up. How about that, an already dangerous Tour de France?
Indeed, and I'm sure that's something the riders don't want to know about, Steve. But anyway, at the moment, they've picked up with the usual fast tempo. Even so, these four riders nosing away to 2 minutes and 44. Now, look, Paul, there's Tony Martin, heavily bandaged, a game, you might say.
Well, he was talking to his teammates yesterday. Look at all the bandages he's got all over his body. He's actually injured in 8/4 of his body. And the fact is, one of his teammates said to him, Tony, you're going to start tomorrow morning. And he just looked at his teammate in the face and said, of course I'm going to start. I'm German.
Well, let's quickly go back to Steve Perino. What have you got, Steve?
Well, Phil, I spoke with the doctor of Tony Martin this morning. He said last night that one of their major concerns was the bruising in his lung, what they found through a CT scan. I asked, well, what's the issue right there? And he said, well, it could affect his lung capacity. As you can imagine, how much it will affect, they couldn't tell by the CT scan, but they said they will know by the end of the day. But the doctor said there is no question that Tony Martin today will suffer.
Well, he's got a fairly steady start here. It's rolling a little bit, but we're basically on the coast. Remember, on the east side of the island, facing the Tyrrhenian Sea. We're going to cross right through the middle of the island. They'll swing off to our left, their right, very shortly. And then it's climbing all the way until they hit the coast on the other side on the road to Ajaccio. They're getting off to a nice start here, but they know they'll fight for positions because we drove the course last night. There's snow on the top of them there hills too, Paul, and the roads are continuously demanding attention, aren't they?
Very, very heavy roads, though, as they head up to the summit of Corsica before they drop down to Ajaccio in the finish line. But the descents, I think, Phil, is where the fear might come in. That's the one thing, and maybe the doctor that Steve Perino talked to didn't factor in. Once you've had a crash, I've always thought that really the most important thing is you lose your nerve more than anything else, and not necessarily anything physical. It's the nerves of the fact that you don't want to crash again because you know your body is already in a little bit of pain and you don't want to accentuate it.
Interesting to see Lars Bohm, the Dutchman, in this breakaway again, because he was in the breakaway yesterday. He picked up the mid-term green jersey points of 20. Now today, Paul, it comes after only 20 miles of racing, that sprint, and he's in the breakaway.
Yeah, it's an important part of introduction that the Tour de France put in last year when they had this one important sprint partway through. Interesting to note yesterday that Mark Cavendish actually didn't come down in that crash, but he put a question to the race referees that if you're going to neutralise the race on time yesterday because of the crashes and the accidents, why not neutralise the race on points as well? Because he's thinking, more importantly, a long way down the road about the points competition. On the far side, you can just see on the white sunglasses hidden by his teammate there. There's Chris Froome. He came out of yesterday's stage fairly unscathed.
Yes, a bit of a shock at the first kilometre when he fell down, but he's okay. There's the yellow jersey, the man who leads all of the competitions after his win yesterday, Marcel Kittel. We'll see how he goes today as we go over into the hills. We'll take our first break. See you back with us very shortly. The Tour de France on NBCSN is brought to you by Giant Bicycles, the world leader in cycling technology and craftsmanship. Learn more at giantbicycles.com. By Strava, Strava built for cyclists. By American Classic. Saturday, August 17th, NBC and NBCSN become the new home for the Barclays Premier League. And for the first time ever, watch every match every week live on TV and online. It's the Barclays Premier League beginning Saturday, August 17. As we gaze out to the blue seas around the island of Corsica today, they're transparent on a beautiful day of no clouds at all in the sky, slight winds. This is Ajaccio, and this is where we're bound for today. Another idyllic little hamlet on this stunningly beautiful island. Let's go now a little bit towards the interior of the island now, because we've made the right turn off the highway with these four leaders. The gap is growing slightly. We've still got that one man chasing, Simon, but I think he's now slowed down. He's waiting in the field to pick him up. These four men get straight onto the climbs today, but the important thing is the first sprint for that green jersey points competition comes 20 miles into the race today. It carries 20 points in that competition, and Lars Bohm, who won that stage yesterday, is in this four-man breakaway, and I'm sure we'll be looking for the actual 20 points again. It could give him the green jersey at the end of this stage. Here's the main field. It's being whipped up by the French wild card team here, Sochazon. And they're chasing down their own teammate, because very shortly we should see Julien Simon brought back into the fold. Well, just take a look at this. This is today's aerial coverage presented by DirecTV. What a stunning, beautiful view. And all of the journalists today brought to the start of the finish line by boat, because the finishing line has got no room to park the vehicles. The cars were parked 7 miles away in the port, and everybody hopped onto a boat, which has brought them down to the race finish. That's another first for the Tour de France in 100 editions. So as we pan around the island, here is Julien Simon waiting for the peloton. He should be. Well, his team is chasing him, Paul. He doesn't look like a man who's slowed down his cadence too much, although he has lost a lot of ground. He's just waiting for that team to pick him up, I think, Julien Simon.
Yeah, I think what he's got to realise now is he is in no man's land. He's halfway across the gap and he's not moving anywhere, which I think is why his team, which is one of the wildcard teams, Team Sochazon from France, they've realised now's the time to pull him back into the fold and try and pull that breakaway group back. I think it's going to be very interesting how the riders actually race this mountainous stage here today, because it's kind of a half mountainous stage that they're looking at. But the gradients, I'm not convinced, are that difficult to get rid of a lot of the big sprinters.
Well, we'll see, because we reached the highest point today, just on 4,000 feet above sea level. That's on the Col de Vizzavona, about 38 miles, 60 kilometres from the finishing line. It's a long, steady drag, but there's a lot of descending there, which takes us down towards Ajaccio before we have that little blip on the radar of the hill at Salario, which comes 16 kilometres out as we go over the top. It's going to be an interesting sting in the tail today, and the riders will catch glimpses of snow in small pockets on top of the highest mountains here, which in fact are over 2.5 thousand metres. So it's a pretty hilly island, it is Corsica.
Very international breakaway we're looking at here as well, Phil, with 4 riders representing 4 different countries. David Veilleux is the rider on the front from Team Europcar. He hails from Canada. Blel Kadri of France is the rider from AG2R. Ruben Perez from Spain. And Lars Bohm, the rider in there from Holland, and a man who has been dominant in the world of cyclocross, which is a winter sport practiced by riding your bike across fields and jumping off to run up the sides of mountains and then back down again. But this man was exceptional, champion of his country for more than 10 years continuously.
4 teams represented here. Europe car is in the breakaway. Team A, G2R Le Mondial. Euskadi have got the early leader in the King of the Mountains yesterday, and Juan Jose Lobato, and they've got Ruben Perez in the breakaway now. And of course, more points at stake today in the King of the Mountains competition. There are 4 climbs, 3 third categories, and 1 second category climb. So that could be the thought behind putting Ruben Perez in the breakaway to keep the King of the Mountains in the lead. Shadows as the sun is right over the top of the riders here on a beautiful day in Corsica, the warmest day of the race so far, and a good day to go mountain climbing today as the riders start to run towards the highest point of the day, just under 4,000 feet on the Col de la Visavona, and it's 60 kilometers from the finish. A little climb towards the end as well. The 4 riders who have established this lead pushing out to about 2 3/4 minutes. But again, Paul, the peloton seem to be hanging on. There's Alberto Contador. The wounds on his left arm there, like so many riders falling off in those crashes yesterday.
Yeah, he won the Tour de France in 2007 and 9. He's one of the most successful Grand Tour riders on the international circuit. And although he hasn't shown great form so far this year, he's one of those riders who's always been able to get himself right for the month of July. It is interesting to note that Omega Pharma Quickstep are quite prepared to do a bit of pacemaking too. Maybe Cavendish thinks he can survive.
Interesting thought. So they're just having a little chat at the front now. The new team, Belkin, have got their man in the breakaway, Lars Bohm. They'll be doing no chasing at all. He could be up there for another long, hot day in the saddle today. Welcome back as we continue on the second day of coverage now here on NBCSN. Excuse me, I'm getting tongue twist this morning. As we watch here all the rise in the Tour, and the man in yellow, he leads in every competition after his win yesterday. He qualifies as the best rider under 26 years of age, Marcel Kittel, so he's got the white jersey. He earned the green jersey as well for the highest point score yesterday, and he's got the yellow jersey, which he has to wear first for the race on time. So as we look here at the damage done to riders, this is the world champion Philippe Gilbert, who also crashed yesterday. Let's go back inside the race with TireRack.com and catch up with Steve Perino again.
Well, Phil, after that short little climber first to the race, number 9, Geraint Thomas of Sky, dropped off a little bit, had to actually move back and met up with the medical vehicle, and they sprayed him down with a little numbing agent on his left hip flexor. Looked like he was in serious pain. Obviously, he was one of the guys who crashed yesterday. Dropped back and talked to his director, Nicholas Portal, and said he was hurting this morning, and he's hoping that somehow he can work through it. Obviously, he's a very important player for Chris Froome.
Yes, absolutely. He's now moving steadily back up through the field, so he'll try and ride that stiffness out of his leg if he can. He's a very strong man to be aside of Chris Froome later in the month. Well, Cannondale yesterday, we didn't see too much at all, but now they've sent a lot of riders up here, so they're taking a lot of interest today in today's stage. Working nice and steady. The boys from Cannondale. It's natural now to see the white jerseys there of Argus Shimano, because they are the teammates of the race leader. So as they always say, if you win the yellow jersey, then it's down to your team to do the work.
At the back end of the main field, though, you can see Philippe Gilbert having a little bit of a hard time going on there. He's just making sure that he gets a slight adjustment to his bike. It could be that he doesn't feel comfortable on his machine after the accident of yesterday. It really knocks the body about quite a bit. But he's a tough character, Gilbert, and he wears the special jersey, the arc-en-ciel, the rainbow bands, as the world champion. But he's yet to get himself a big victory. And in fact, I think he's decided to stop at the side of the road there and let the mechanic do this properly.
World champion mechanic running back to sort out the problem of the world champion here. Well, he is the teammate, of course, of Cadel Evans. I think Steve Perino might be pretty close to Gilbert. Are you, Steve?
Well, Phil, I am pretty close, but not quite close enough to find out what's going on. He's about 100 yards back. When I know something, I'll check back in with you.
All right, well, I can tell you then he's having his seat pin adjusted here. Now, this is a rider who's in his 7th Tour de France. He's worn all of the leaders' jerseys at some stage, yellow, green, and the King of the Mountains. And he's won 1 stage as well. Now, just take a look at this. There's the clock counting. He's lost nearly a minute, but the convoy's still going past. That's all he wants to know about. Seems to have sorted it out. And he's underway, so he won't have a problem at this stage of the race to get back in the race. The riders have covered about 27 kilometres, about 16.5 miles done of today's stage. He won his championship of the world in Holland last year, which was almost a home win, because he comes just across the border, quite literally where the race was in Holland, in Belgium, in the Belgian Ardennes. And a lot of people there to support him. But the big thing is he has won only 1 very small town race since he became world champion. And of course he really wants a big win, like all world champions do. These are the 4 leaders now: Kadri, Perez, Villiers and Bohm, as they continue unabated. We're now heading down towards Castello di Rostino, which is where we contest the green jersey sprint. Winner gets 20 points. We'll take a quick break now, but we'll be back in time to see that sprint. Well, let's begin by taking a look at the Tour leaders presented by Cadillac, and there's only one name on 3 of those jerseys. Marcel Kittel, who won the stage yesterday, leads in yellow, green and white as the best young rider under 26 years of age. The odd man out was in the breakaway yesterday, and Juan Jose Lobato of Spain, he's the leader, the first leader in the King of the Mountains. This is where we are today, and we're not far away from Monte Cinto at the moment. Which is situated in this region here. It is a former volcano made up of rhyolitic rocks and is Corsica's highest summit, and the snow is in evidence. Hasn't quite gone away yet. It's probably north facing rather than south facing, I guess. But the riders are not too far away from this part of the region. Well, you wouldn't be if you're on the island, would you? So waiting now for the green jersey sprint, and the winner will get 20 points. And racing for it today, there's no doubt, is the man at the back, waiting for the moment, Lars Bohm. That was 2 kilometres to go to the sprint. We've just seen, if you caught a glimpse of it. So we head to Castello di Rossigno. So as we look at these 4 leaders, Paul, you know, thinking of what you were telling me about Mark Cavendish saying, if you're going to neutralise the race for yellow, why didn't you neutralise the race for green? I think he's got a valid point.
I think he's got a very, very valid point. And I think there was chaos in the race yesterday. A little bit of it did come from the race referees, who made that decision to finish the race at 3 kilometres to go. And we looked at the finishing point at 3 kilometres to go, and that would have been carnage to try and finish there, because it was through a chicane. And that's the difficult thing, I think. And then they decided to go to the finish line. So I think Cavendish has got a good point.
Well, I'll tell you, we were reading the riders' tweets, you know, Paul, and they were quite graphic. Mark Cavendish, he said, I'd love an explanation from UCI Cycling as to why time was neutralised on yesterday's stage, but not the points. Only the GC riders were affected there. And Chris Froome said, Mark Cavendish has got a valid point, so you must have been listening to you.
Yeah, I think it was a chaotic race for everybody concerned. They had to make some very quick decisions out on the road to try and keep the race safe. At the end of the day, it's all about the riders' safety.
Well, these are the 4 boys. We're now approaching, if we haven't just gone under it, no, we haven't, 1,000 metres to the finish of the green jersey sprint. There's only one out on the course under the new rules nowadays in the Tour de France. The man at the back won it yesterday, shoulder to shoulder. He was with a cousin, the teammate of the rider number 58 there at the back of the race at the moment, Villiers. Now, I think Lars will have an easier sprint here, but I think Villiers is not a bad sprint, actually.
Well, no, David Villiers, the Canadian rider on Team Europe car, has got a very fast turn of speed. But I have to say, Lars Boom, a very canny man when it came to the sprint yesterday.
Important to watch for the peloton as well. Best of the rest get 11 points across the line. And remember, the two men who have made this competition their target this year, Mark Cavendish and Sagan, expect to see them going shoulder to shoulder about 3 minutes after this sprint, which is due to start about now. Interesting that Lars Bohm has gone to the front, and maybe they're not going to challenge him here because they weren't in. He's not so sure himself. He's gone to the front. I think they're just going to allow him the 20 points because they're not really in the competition. So that's about the easiest sprint Lars has ever won.
Well, he didn't get surprised by a last-minute attack there, and he's the man who appears to be the powerhouse in this breakaway, so I think they gave him the honour of allowing those 20 points. But you can be certain, Phil, behind, there will be a scramble for the 11 points which remain on the line for the first man to cross there. Yesterday, that point went to Andre Greipel, and today I wonder if he'll get challenged by Mark Cavendish. Cavendish, I think, as we said a little bit earlier, he's got a very valid point. If you're going to neutralise 1 point of the race, well, you know, for me, the green jersey in recent years has become almost as important as the yellow jersey for a lot of teams and their strategies.
Yes, of course, and that's why it was put in the Tour de France, so that riders who couldn't climb mountains had a competition that they could actually take part in. And so it is as important to them as the yellow jersey. So Lars Bohm has got the 20 points. He's gone up now into the top of that list. Don't forget that yesterday Kittel was scoring well. He gets maximum points on the finishing line as 2. So he's still got the green jersey lead. Christoph in second place. But now we can expect to see this all change as we get down to the finish. Now, the Cannondale boys, they're the teammates of Peter Sagan. On the left of our picture are the white jersey boys, the teammates of the yellow jersey, Kittel. So it looks as though they're going to go head-to-head. And on the right, the blue jersey of guess who?
Mark Cavendish, Omega Pharma Quickstep. But over on the other side, the dark blue jerseys of Danny van Poppel, the youngster, 19 years of age, who was third on the stage yesterday. And talking to a number of the Dutch journalists last night, Phil, they were very, very pleased to see that position. 1 kilometre to go.
Well, I think Danny van Poppel has got a great future at 19 years of age. He almost pulled off a stage win. Now, there's 3 trains trying to get into this. The boys in blue have dropped away a little bit because it looks as though it's the yellow jersey going to take on the green jersey of Peter Sagan here. I'm waiting to see the arrival of the white jersey of Mark Cavendish, the British champion, but I don't see him at the moment.
Yeah, but Greipel is right up there on the wheel of Peter Sagan, waiting for the chance for him to open up the gap. Now Sagan is moving into second position behind his teammate.
Well, these early days, you race for every point in the green jersey competition. They're trying to launch Sagan. He is coming through. Cavendish on the far left. Cavendish looking at back wheels to see which is the best one to follow here. The yellow jersey is out of this one. Sagan is going to move out of the shadow. On the left of our picture, Peter Sagan comes up nicely onto the sprint. Cav is on his wheel, or trying desperately to get on his wheel. He's third place, but it doesn't matter. Even Sagan got beat in the end as Greipel came up on the right of our picture and got the points, just like he did yesterday.
Well, that's important. Every little point can count when it comes down to the Champs-Élysées at the end, and these guys in the main field just having a quick look to see how the sprint evolved. You can see Cavendish ducking and diving there in about second and third position, but Greipel has got the power in that slightly uphill finish, which is why he may well try and survive over the climbs today.
The other rider in that sprint was Danny van Poppel, so the 4 sprinters getting involved there. Now, Greipel did say yesterday, he said it in this morning's papers actually, that he lost the chance of a lifetime to lead the Tour de France yesterday. He was left standing on the roadside with no gears. Now, some people were blaming Greipel for the accident. He was getting into holes that weren't really there in the peloton. He lost his gears as a result. But had it been in the sprint, he might be sprinting well enough to have won that stage yesterday, and therefore would have been the first leader of the Tour. Overall, Lars Bohm gets the 20 points. Vellier is second. Kadri is third. And the 4th man of the breakaway is Ruben Perez. He gets 13 for 4th place. Greipel will get the 5th place finish there. It won't affect the overall standings just yet. Marcel Kittel, 45 for his win yesterday. Bohm has come up now up into 2nd place in that competition. He will have 40 points. So the blue skies are with us all the way to Ajaccio today. I can tell you where we're sitting on the beach again. There's beautiful blue skies, very little wind drifting in off the sea either. We're looking across at land, but it is in fact Corsica, because we are in a bay, and a very nice bay it is too. We'll take another break now, but that's the first competition behind us for the day. Next one will be the first climb of the day. Early days, but let's remind ourselves where the Americans are standing in this race after yesterday's stage. Best placed in the finish yesterday, Christian van der Velde in 38th place. Talansky on his first tour, 111. Tommy D, 112. Bookwalter, 140. TJ Van Garderen, 195th. And Ted King in amongst the injury list as well yesterday in 197. Well, no time lost, just a low finish for TJ Van Garderen yesterday. There was a reason for that, so let's find out more now, because this morning before the start, Caroline Mano was talking with TJ Van Garderen.
Can you describe what happened yesterday and tell us how you're feeling today?
It was just a little hectic final. I mean, it was a really easy day. The brake rolled off the front, and so we got to kind of cruise all day, and then in the final it got really nervous, you know, with everyone with fresh legs and super motivated for it being a tour. Of course, it's nervous. Then with the confusion of what happened on the bus, it just made things even more complicated, and ended up getting involved in a little spill.
How are you feeling physically?
I feel fine. Actually, all in all, I'm pretty lucky. It was a high-speed, pretty ugly crash, and I got a couple little scrapes, but nothing big.
Just reduced his weight a bit, so he'll be fine. But TJ Van Garderen is a man waiting in the wings to see if his opportunity this year comes to try and win the Tour de France. He's the leading man on the team alongside one of the Tour favourites, Cadel Evans of Australia. I'll tell you a little story about yesterday, because Koen van Coort, and I'll tell you in a moment as we go back into the action here. And a lovely crowd here. That's the flag of Corsica. Just saying, as we look here, the flag of Corsica being waved for the riders. Another nice crowd here, then followed by the flag of Norway. Interesting, just to go briefly back to the situation and the confused finish yesterday, the bus stories. You know, the riders have radios, but a lot of the riders didn't hear their directors tell them that the finish had been moved to 3 kilometres to go, and then moved back to the finishing line. And the poor old coup de court on the race winners team, Argus Shimano, he heard the race director say, the finish today will be at the finish line. And he thought, what on earth is he talking about? It's always at the finish line. But he'd missed the first message saying it had been moved to 3 kilometres before the finish line.
But there was a certain amount of confusion, especially from the race winner, Marcel Kittel. He didn't even know that there was any changes had taken place at all. And I think that a lot of guys, when they come to the final part of the race, they discard the race radio because they want to get themselves into their own little cocoon and get themselves concentrated on the job at hand and not want any interference from the team manager.
Absolutely. So there's a nice shot for you. That is now the finishing line. We're commentating just on the left of the picture here. And the banner, you might notice, is higher. So that's at that height, because when the race caravan arrives, they will all clear it. But yesterday, the bus from the Australian team, Orica Green Edge, was running late. And they'd already dropped it down with the photo finish equipment and the electrics on it, and then the bus came and hit it. And by the way, he received a fine of about $1,500 US, the bus driver, oh, the team did, not the bus driver, yesterday, because for his late arrival at the finish, not because he hit the banner. And there's where it all happened. Everybody thinking, what on earth is going on? And the big danger was, of course, he was about to take the banner and the gantry clean off the finishing line. We're a bit concerned because we're the first commentators to the right of that banner, and had it gone forward, we would have copped it. But we'd have kept telling you the story, rest assured. Anyway, they backed him off, and that's all that matters, and they got him off the road. All this about 11 minutes to spare before the race coming. Here's Chris Froome. We saw him dropping back. He's coming forward again in the peloton now. Routine visit to the team car at the back of the race. Sometimes riders do it because they do generally have a problem or they want to drink. Some do it because they get bored if the pace isn't really on, and they just go back and have a chat and then move back up the field. But Froome going straight back to where all race favourites always ride, and that's near the front of the peloton. Now, that's not just done for sensible tactics. It's just done to also point out to your other rivals that you're feeling good and you're feeling strong. If a leader hovers around the back for too long, people start to think, is he feeling sick today? Is he suffering? These are the four leaders as we're heading up to the first hour of coverage. It's been their third. They've done about 45 kilometres, so it's not a bad average speed as we've left the east side of the island to cross through the middle. So you can see a little bit of snow in the distance on those higher climbs, which are up to 2,500 meters, over 10,000 feet. As they continue on. So as we watch them snake their way through the villages, here's something special for you. Later today, the best in women's golf compete for major championship glory. It's the US Women's Open Championship, which will begin today at 2:30 Eastern on NBC. The cloud on the hills just here as we pass through another pretty village right in the centre of the island now. This village, the Tour de France in Corsica, the first time in its 100 editions history. It's 110 years old, but of course it had to stop for 2 world wars. First race being held back in 1903 when the biggest ever winning margin was created, almost 3 hours, by the famous chain-smoking chimney sweep Maurice Garin. But the following year was disqualified for cheating. Now, hey, what's new? We'll take a break.
Back here at the Tour de France, I'm with Bill Shook from American Classic. He has a very unique hub design. Take us through the internals of this product.
It's a coasting mechanism that uses aluminum ratchet teeth, and it uses 6 pawls to engage those aluminum ratchet teeth. But I had to make sure that all 6 pawls would always engage. So I came up with this cam plate or timing plate system that times the engagement of those 6 pawls, and it allows me to transmit very high torques through these aluminum ratchet teeth. And by using aluminum, it keeps the whole system very, very lightweight, but it ends up to be one of the strongest systems in the world. And it will transmit the kinds of torques that the riders in the Tour de France put through a bicycle wheel.
Few things are as critical as the power the riders have in their legs and the engagement at the rear wheel. Thank you very much, Bill.
Well, thank you, Bob.
NBC Sports coverage of Stage 2 is presented by Competitive Cyclist, your source for pro-caliber bicycles, apparel and accessories. Fuel your passion at competitivecyclist.com. The workhorses of the day as we now continue with the breakaway. This is Stage 2 of the Tour de France, 97 miles across the centre of Corsica today as the riders move now gently away from Bastia and arrive in Ajaccio after the crossing of the mountains in between. We're right through them there hills today. There's the peloton, probably as far away from the 4 leaders as it's been all day at the moment. But interestingly, it's the teammates of Peter Sagan who have been doing all of the chasing. There is the front here now with Lars Bohm. And we're on the first climb, but this climb goes on for ages. There's a couple of false descents before we gradually get up to the summit of the Col de la Balangranjaho, which will take us to 70 kilometers. Well, let's go back to our TireRack.com inside the race, and I'll report with Steve Perino. Steve?
Well, Phil, I promised you I would follow up on the story of Philippe Gilbert. No panic back there for him. He logged on to the peloton about 10 minutes ago, had a saddle issue. He has a new saddle because yesterday when he crashed, he destroyed his saddle, and so now he's getting used to the new one. There was simply no panic for him getting back onto the peloton. In fact, watched him about 1 inch off the bumper of the team car. A dicey proposition to my eye.
But I did notice it wasn't his team car. That's the favourite trick of the professional. If you pace behind your own team car, you're likely to get disqualified, so use somebody else's. So the peloton moving steady, but not breaking any records at the moment, although they've had a very good first out of racing, just under 45 kilometres now, but we did have the flat road start and all of the basic action. Marcel Kittel, owner of 3 jerseys today, but he's got to wear the yellow one under the regulations. The white one for the best young rider, fittingly enough, is being worn today by the youngest rider in the race, 19-year-old Danny Van Poppel, who was 3rd in the sprint yesterday, and the King of the Mountains is being worn by Juan Jose Lobato of the Euskaltel team. You might lose that in the next couple of minutes, though, because there are 4 climbs on the route today, and he's not in the leading group. But his teammate is Ruben Perez.
Mainfield slowing down a fraction now. They've noticed that the gap has started to come down inside of the 3 minutes. But they're getting to the more difficult gradients now as they start to head up to the high spots. They've got the rumblings behind them of the start away from Bastia. They're now getting right into the heart of the mountains and climb up to a maximum of around about 4,000 feet, just inside of 4,000 feet. But I do think, Phil, that a lot of these riders, the sprinters, Cavendish, Greipel and the rest, think they can survive today's stage.
Peter Kennock then, his first Tour de France, number 3. As they continue now, as we take a nice little look at the river, which runs very close to here. This is the Golo, and it's Corsica's largest coastal river. As it sees the beauty of Corsica, the peloton roll on deeper. Situated in the interior of the island, distant from most other citadels, stands the Citadel Rule, or the Citadel of Corte. Commonly known as the Eagle's Nest, it contains the museums of Corsica, whose exhibits include many artifacts and other anthropological finds native to the island. Also found in the geological centre of the island is the statue of Jean-Pierre Gaffori, a Corsican who, as Corti native, found as a general in the Corsican independence wars. In the square of the house birth, bullet holes in the walls are still visible on the building facades to this day, soaked in history. France took control, by the way, here in 1769. These are the leaders. We're way out into the hills now. Little pockets of people have managed to get up here before they close the roads and cheer them on. 4 riders setting the trend today, getting away after the flurry of activity as we left Bastia. And now they settle down to be the break of the day. Whether they stay away to finish that, of course, is highly debatable at the moment. Number 87 there is Biel Kadri, regular man on the attack. And David Vellier, the first timer in the break, the rookie from Canada, riding for Europcar. Still seeing a lovely blue skies. The only moisture is above the highest of the mountains here on the island at the moment, but it's lovely and warm, approaching 76 degrees Fahrenheit even in the mountains, before we run down to the other side and to the coast. It's a perfect day for the second stage of the Tour de France. So as we look here, this is the long line of Argus Shimano riders, and you can see right at the end there was the yellow jersey of Marcel Kittel, riding where he always will. He rides at the rear of his team all day. Now then, so let's see then whose value is rising, brought to you by Scottrade. And of course, who else can it be? Far right, he was in white yesterday, quickly to convert it to yellow. Best of the sprinters left standing in the race for the line yesterday. Marcel Kittel gets his first career win in the Tour de France, and shortly his first career yellow jersey. It's his second Tour de France, and this was only day 1. The German couldn't believe it was a perfect day for him. So as Kittel now stands his first day in defence of not just that lead, but in the lead in white and the lead in the green jersey as well. We'll see how he gets on at the finish. You can see him in the middle of the bunch there in that yellow jersey. Well, down at the start this morning, Caroline Manot was a very busy lady, but she can now tell us a little bit more about Marcel Kittel. Caroline.
With all the confusion that happened at the end of yesterday's race, it was actually a lack of confusion for Argus Shimano and Marcel Kittel that helped them get the stage win. See, what happened was there was a technical issue with the team radio when the team was trying to tell all the riders that the finish had been changed from the end to the 3-kilometer mark. They never got the message. So while all the other riders were scrambling and crashing, it was business as usual for Argus Shimano, and they made it through clean.
They certainly did, and a perfect day for one of the World Tour teams in this year's Tour de France. As we fly above, seeing a part of Corsica that the rest can't see down below there, these red-topped famous villages. As we're now next on the map, we're going to go into Corte itself. As we then find, as you leave Corte, you're on the long climb, which will take us up to the top of the Col de la Belgraniajo, which is only 3rd category. Now, they rate the cols 1, 2 and 3 and 4 indeed. 1 is the highest, HC is the highest, but we don't get to those till we get to the mountains of the Pyrenees and the Alps. 2 and 3, and we have a 2nd category climb on the course today. So these are the 4 riders. Working hard at the front is Lars Boom. Well, don't forget, when you ride the Tour de France, you always dream. Some dreams are good and some are bad. Night, 11 Eastern on the NBC Sports Network. The 4 leaders out in front for most of the day. The man who's been doing an awful lot of the work is the rider in green. He's back up there again. 30% of the work rate attributed here to David Villiers, the Canadian on the French team, but he speaks their language. He's a Quebecois. And Ruben Perez is the rider in the orange jersey, though, who'll be looking for the king of the mountain points. So they've all been sharing the weight and doing what they can. Now, this is what we mean by doing and helping each other. One rider takes the turn into the wind for as long as he can, usually about 150, 200 meters. Then he drops back into the slipstream, follows through in that slipstream consistently until it's his turn at the front again. When he's in the slipstream, they say he is saving 30% of his energy. So the answer is ride in the slipstream and stay out front only when you have to, I guess. 101.5 kilometers still to ride, about 64 miles to race. And just as we're about to show you that rider in orange peel off and demonstrate that graphic, we pulled away. Never mind, we're not in control of the cameras, that's a big point. The man in yellow is just sitting, and so far he's certainly got control of the race with his team here. Marcel Kittel looking very cool, calm and collected. Well, considering all the hills are still ahead, there's not too much concern on the faces of these riders. Delighted to say all 198 finishing yesterday and starting this morning. There was big discussion overnight if Tony Martin would be able to start. He lost consciousness twice yesterday after his crash. He was really knocked around. He went to hospital. Big news was no broken bones.
Well, that's the big advantage. He's a tough character. We've seen him in situations like this in the past. And if you remember, he tried to drag his body through the Tour de France just 12 months ago last year because he was trying to use the Tour de France as preparation for the individual time trial at the Olympic Games. He knew he needed 10 hard days in his legs. And he rode with a fractured scaphoid for 10 days at the back of the pack before eventually pulling out.
Well, he was advised to pull out in the end by the race doctors, but at the end of the day, it was all worthwhile because he finished second in the Olympic Games. He got a silver medal, and he also finished second in the World Time Trial Championship as well. So good luck to Tony Martin in the end. Now this is the breakaway working away here. 4 riders. Will they survive? We'll get the indications now because we're starting to go steadily uphill, even though we're not yet on the categorized sections of the course. As I think it was Andy Schleck who said before this race started, he said the second day, he said, there's no flat road, you're either going up or down. But the judges, of course, only put markers on for the King of the Mountains at the best points. And there's only 4 categorized climbs, but they're always climbing or descending today.
The 2 little lumps in the middle of the race today, those are the ones that are concerns to the riders. The Col de Belgranaggio and, of course, the big col of the day, the Col de Visanova, which is a second categorized climb. A couple of birthdays today, by the way, Phil. I'm not sure if you've been and looked through the record books, but Sylvain Chavanel is 34 years of age today. Happy birthday to him. And also a teammate of Cadel Evans, Marcus Burkhardt. He's a mere 30.
Oh, he's still a young man for the Tour de France. I think I just said that Martin finished second in the World Championship. It was his second World Time Trial Championship. You better get that right. So these are the 4 men out front. Villiers still stomping on those pedals. He's got the highest work rate in the front group as he stays out up front. Now, we talked about Sylvain Chavanel's birthday, and he is a man for the Tour de France. And Steve Perino down at the back of the peloton on motorbike for TireRack.com inside the race. Steve, have you got some more about Sylvain Chavanel?
Well, did you see the birthday present that he is on? Specialized made a bike for him. It is colored orange to match, get this, his Camaro that he owns back at home, and that Camaro also goes along with the pink Harley that he owns. And if you get a closer look at the bike, you'll notice what appears to be kind of a gearing sort of visage, and that same picture you will find on the tattoo on the back of his leg. It all fits together with Chavanel on his birthday.
It most certainly does. He rode in the Amgen Tour of California this year, a very friendly cyclist, and after the Tour of California and before this race, he conquered the National Time Trial Championship of France for a 5th time. And he also finished second in the Road Race Championship just over a week today, in fact. And so he's having a good season already. Now, this is a difficult stretch. When the riders go into these tunnels, their eyes shut down. It's all right for the cars, they turn the lights on. Then you come back out into the glare of the sun. There's plenty of those tunnels, especially in Italy, and they're often the subject of quite serious crashes because of the darkness. No problems today for these riders. They're getting higher as they continue, but these are good, steady slopes, very well surfaced roads. They're riding pretty high pedaling ratios here, big gears, and keeping the pressure on. But we're going into the mountains now, and we're going to stay there more or less until the last 16 kilometers of the day. So the big question is, can the sprinter Marcel Kittel keep that yellow jersey today? Marcel Kittel gets the victory, and he gets a yellow jersey. The beautiful blue waters of the island of Corsica, day 2 in the Tour de France, as the riders now course across the island from the east to the west, from Bastia to Ajaccio. Tomorrow we'll move a little bit further up to Calvi, and then we'll be all on our way back to mainland France. 3 very different days of racing here on this island. The logistics are mind-boggling here to have brought the Tour de France. Almost 5,000 people on the Tour de France. And to get us off the island and resume the race, we need aeroplanes and big boats. Looks like we're speeding into Corte here now, and there'll be a big crowd here, Paul. This is a delightful town.
It certainly is a very historic town as well, that over the years has been, if you like, the unofficial capital of Corsica, independent Corsica, as we said earlier, led by Pasquale Paoli, but it's also the home now of an organisation that wants Corsica to be independent again. It is interesting that for a long time Corsica was very much linked to Italy through the command of the Genoan family, the Genoan royal family, and it was part of that area that dominated this part of the world. And it was so much closer to Italy than we are to France, 120 miles away from France at the moment, and that is a long boat ride up to Nice.
Well, what a change to yesterday when we had those narrow roads. At the moment, they're spreading right across this highway on the approach to Corte. Everybody racing to see the front here. All the sprinters are coming forward, at least the sprinters' teammates. Now, we mentioned earlier about the Mark Cavendish tweets and the green jersey controversy, as well as the yellow jersey controversy. A little bit more on the conversation then. We can go back to TireRack.com. There's a man inside the race, Steve Perino.
Well, Phil, as you noted, the riders spreading across the road here back with the team cars, a rumor is spreading through them that as a result of some of the complaints from Cavendish and Froome, as you mentioned, that there was a possibility that the organization might eliminate the green jersey points from yesterday, start afresh today. That coming from Nico Verhoeven, the team director of Belkin, who has Lars Boom up in the break. With that rumor in mind, of course, they wanted to put him up front, see if he could get the green jersey. So I went with that up to the director of the race, Jean-Francois Pichot, and I asked him if there's any traction to this rumor whatsoever. And we had a very brief conversation. He looked up to me and he said, no, which I'm pretty sure is a French word for no.
Well, I know Jean-Francois, and I'm quite sure it means what he says, no. Nico Verhoeven, he was a Dutchman, and he rode the Tour 3 times. Only finished once, by the way. That is the statue of Pasquale Paoli we're looking at the moment, who has been seen as the father of Corsican patriotism. And this is where it all happened for him. You'll see a lot of his statues here in Corte. As the riders now just leaving Corte here, they're just onto the first official climb of the day, the Col du Bella-Gragnano, which takes us through to 70 kilometers covered, about 45 miles done, when they get to the top of it. So they're just on the lower slopes. It just twists and turns. It's not a backbreak. It just goes on a bit. It's 6.6 miles in length, you can see, with the gradient's only 4.6%. We start at 86 kilometers to go, 86 miles to go when we get there. 2,372 feet, this one. We go higher than that today. We'll top out at around 3,800 feet a little bit later on. Well, this starts gently enough, Paul, twists its way around a bit, it gets inside the trees. When we get inside those trees, you may find our pictures crackle and spit a little bit. That's because they're blocking the up signals to the helicopters above the race, but we won't lose pictures today. It is such a lovely day here in Corsica. I think the riders in many ways will be sad to go back into France because they really enjoyed being here in Corsica, and so the people enjoyed having the Tour de France. The peloton should be starting the climb now because the gap is not that much, 1 3/4 minutes. There they are, and just down the back at a minute 45. 92 kilometers is the distance from the finish now. There's a little bit of a board up front there showing the riders what the time gap is at the start, 1:45. Now let's see how they score today. On this climb they're on now, it's only the first two riders, 2 and 1, third category you see. La Serra is the same third category, same. 2 riders only score, 2 points, 1 point. The second category climber, the Vizzavona, there's first 4 riders, 5, 3, 2, 1, and then we're back to the third category, so another 2 and a 1 at Salario, which is the difficult climb, but it's very short. Less than about a half a mile, I suppose, the climb. So that's where all the points are. So we're getting into our teeth into the cake now as we go into the mountains of Corsica. The breakaway is going to try and hang on to a lead of 1 minute 45. The Tour de France and NBCSN is brought to you by Direct. Yes, welcome back. It was the first Tour de France for Juan José Lobato yesterday, and he won the lead in the King of the Mountains with the 1 point he required on the climb. He's not in the breakaway today, but his teammate is, Ruben Perez, so the team may still keep the King of the Mountains jersey on their squad by the end of this day, because there's 4 climbs today, so the 1 point for Lobato yesterday isn't going to help too much today. This is all up and down on the road today. You'll hear the riders plunge, and then you'll hear them start the climb again as we gradually get up to the top of this first climb. Still is quite clearly under the control here of the sprinters teams. This is Rowan Dennis, number 174, the Australian in his first tour, just gone through picture. Great hopes for him for the future, and I think we're going to talk good about him during the next few weeks, Paul.
We've got the 2 big peaks of the day as we start to move through. We've got this long climb of 6 kilometers, a bit of a descent down into the valley, then 2 climbs bolted together, the Col de Serra and the Col de Vizzavona, making a distance of around about 9.5 kilometers of climbing. These magnificent gorges of Restonica. The reason that they're here is they've been carved away. There's a lake up at the top here, by the way, called the Mellow Lake, and the lake, once the waters start to melt and the snow start to melt into winter, the river cuts its way down here, and that's what's opened up this gorge through this magnificent granite outcropping.
Yes, and they reckon that lake is frozen for 6 months out of the 12, so it must be pretty cold in the basin, some 1,700 meters above sea level. Now, what's going on here? A little bit of a problem. Sebastian Minard has got a back wheel flat, I think. The doctor's car's just come through. He's just checking to make sure that rider stopped for a mechanical and not because of a problem. Slowed down, but he's gone back. As Sky are now just checking out each other here. Nobody in any hurry. There's the situation with the AG2R rider. He's been stopped for 20 seconds and counting. So 26 seconds. He's going uphill, remember, so that's not going to be quite so far away from it. But if he's good and it's only a quick wheel change, you know, it's a back wheel, takes a little bit longer than the front wheel, a bit more complex with all the cluster of the gears at the back, but he should be away in less than 15 seconds, but 26 and he's off. Just about 1,000 meters up to the summit now. You get some idea when looking over the rider's shoulders how high we are going, but you don't really get that feeling from seeing the race on the slopes. Very, very gradual climbing here on this first climb. They call it a col, which is a mountain, but really to these riders it won't feel like a big col like we'll see later on in the Pyrenees. There's that lake you were talking about.
Well, there you go. That's the Lake Camelo. It's way up. The mountain behind it peaks out at 2,600 meters, and it's Corsica's second highest summit. And nestled in the bottom of it is that glacial lake. And as you can see, once the snows do start to melt around here, the overflow goes down through that valley down into the bottom to create those beautiful gorges.
The four leaders continue to climb up towards the summit. Now keep a close eye on the rider in the orange jersey. That's Ruben Perez. It's his teammate back in the peloton, Labarthe, who has the King of the Mountains lead, so he'll try to take the points. And as he can't help Labarthe, he will take them for his own good, because whoever wins this climb will be the new leader in the King of the Mountains competition. And that will be very, very nice too for David Vellieux if he could do it for Canada.
Yeah, but only by a single point.
That's all right.
Close
Lead's
battle.
a lead, isn't it?
Close battle. And there's a chance, though, just 15 kilometers further on to get a few more points, because then we'll drop down very briefly into the valley and then head back up to the Col de Serra, which is also a third category climb.
Yeah, nice descent too off all of these mountains today. Pretty good descending. The crucial one will be the descent off the Salario, just about 10 miles or 16 kilometers from the finish, because then they go onto the beach and then it's a real matter of survival. If they've rid themselves of the sprinters on this steep little climb towards the end, they're not going to wait for anybody on the last kilometers to run into the finish.
Watch out for Blel Kadri, because he's a pretty good climber. He's finished well up in the Giro d'Italia in the big mountain passes. I'm not sure if the gradient here will suit the man from AG2R, if he's got the explosive acceleration of maybe Ruben Perez, who's now sitting in an ideal position in fourth spot there.
Always finished his Tour de France. Blel Kadri has ridden 3. Finished 117th and 89th in the last 2 years in the Tour. Clearly he's found his form at the right time. A minute 46. The peloton are not chasing this group. They've got them pegged and they're not worried about closing in on them. As they come up towards the summit here, Perez has got himself in the best position. He's not a big race winner. In fact, he's only won one race in his life back in quite a way back. It was a stage of a race in Germany in 2010, but he turned pro in 2006. But he is a vastly experienced team rider in the major Grand Tours. That's the Tours of Italy, Spain and France. And he's always ridden well in the Tour of Spain, and he's always ridden pretty strongly in the Tour de France as well.
Very nervous these guys will get. Look at the average speed for 18 kilometers an hour. So it gives you an indication it's quite a nasty little gradient. Around about 11 miles an hour going uphill. And as you can see, they're riding on the small chain rings. It's a 6% gradient. Notice that Lars Bohm has moved to the back of the group to keep an eye on who may well make the first acceleration. I wouldn't be surprised to see it come from the man in the orange jersey.
He's the anticipated one. If you say you come from Spain, everybody immediately thinks you're a great climber anyway, because of the nature of that country. And looks like we've currently lost the riders as we wander off into the national park here and check out the scenery of the beautiful gorges of Restonica. Back to the riders now as they continue their climb here at the Bella Granajo. Climb. Not interested in pushing too much here, Perez, but he would love this race to stay clear, at least for the first 3 climbs of the day. I think it'll be a free for everybody as they come down to the Solario, just by Ajaccio itself. But he'll want to get those points as much as he can. So the Saxo Bank of Contador on the left, the Sky team in the centre there of Chris Froome. The 2 top favourites of the Tour de France are sitting right where they should be, at the front of the race. Welcome back, and literally a minute ago, this is what happened at the top of the first category climb of the Tour de France this year. It was a full-on sprint. They cat and moused all the way up, and surprisingly, it was Lars Bohm who took out the points at the top. He gets 2 points for that, and Ruben Perez, the man we thought might win, he gets 1. And so, for the moment, we have a new leader in the King of the Mountains today with Lars Bohm. The big Dutchman, the finish suited him. It wasn't a very strenuous climb, I have to be honest, this one. And they'll make a short descent now, and then they'll start the climb of the Col de la Serra, which is rated 3rd category as well. So there'll be another 2 points available, and not too far behind. There's the leaders going through now live, so that's the gap, just over a minute to the main field. And noticeably, Mark Cavendish riding right down at the back of the field there. So as they've gone over the top there, Paul, when the peloton went through, Mark Cavendish had slipped right to the rear of the peloton. Doesn't really like the hills, does he?
But that's what the sprinters will do, Phil. They'll start at the front end of the climb, and they'll slip back slowly through the main field and hope they're still in contact once they go over the summit. And once that happens, they'll scramble back to the front end of the group once again.
2 points then for Lars Bohm, and 1 point for Ruben Perez at the top of that mountain. So a new leader in the King of the Mountains for the moment in Bohm. So the mist is flying in off the top of the cols, but we're about a good 1,000 feet below the level of that cloud as they continue now in and out the trees. A little bit of a descent following now as we start to move on towards the next climb of the day, the Col de la Serra. And they're all back together again. They're all friends now, but they've lost almost half of the lead, and up goes the hand of David Valeur. The way his hand went up there, he might have a flat tyre rather than he wants a drink of water, because he went up rather quickly. 44 seconds, and now it's Garmin Sharp, the American team, who started to drive at the front.
And it's Gert Stegemans over on the right-hand side, the big sprinter from Belgium, one of the lead-out train for Mark Cavendish. And there's the birthday boy in the middle in the Omega Pharma Quick-Step jersey as well, Sylvain Chavanel, 34 years of age today, and Chris Froome in the white sunglasses over on the left-hand side.
So as July is on the horizon, the Tour de France starting this year, just in the last few days of June. It's been in July throughout history, since it was first held back in 1903. These are the boys at the back who had a few deep breaths, I would think, on the speed of they came up the climb there, because they really ate into the lead of those 4 riders. They're sitting just off now, 3/4 of a minute.
You see a lot of movement to the front now, because we've got this little technical descent for 5 kilometers or so, and the gap is down to just 37 seconds. I think they've now decided we're going to pull these guys back into the fold, and still Marcel Kittel over on the left-hand side in the yellow jersey. The sprinters are surviving today, Phil.
Got to keep his troops up near the front here. He's living in hope that this last little climb is not going to be too severe. There's no really rope and tackle type climbs on the stage today, so sprinters who are really strong could hang on to this peloton, but I'm not too sure about the last climb. It doesn't look much. It looks like a little pimple, but we spoke to 2 riders who are experienced in the Tour de France, said they rode it this morning. It is very, very hard, and in their opinion, the sprinters won't be there for the run-in. We'll see.
Well, we'll all have to see. It depends how the other teams who don't have sprinters on board decide to hit that climb, and that's what's going to make it a lot more difficult. I wouldn't be surprised to see a move coming from BMC, maybe even Cadel Evans trying to toughen up the race for his own teammate, Philippe Gilbert.
Now, they've got to be a little bit careful here now as we start this descent. This is the tricky town as they go through. There's 1 or 2 really sharp bends going down here now. Riders are going to have to brake hard. The switchbacks come pretty tight. The police were actually moving all cars off the road down here because normally in the evening there's nothing comes down these roads in Corsica. You can have a nice time in the local cafes. There's the gendarmes of France who do such an incredible job guiding these riders safely around this course.
Well, that squadron is not just any old squadron of policemen. That's the Garde Républicaine, who normally throughout the majority of the year spend their time scurrying the President of France around and keeping him nice and safe. And I think they enjoy their month off in July on the Tour.
Some month off. This is Santo Pietro di Venaco.
Bit technical at the moment as they make their way down this rather windy descent. A little bit of a problem there for Blel Kadri in second position. But on a descent like this, they will be averaging about 45 and maybe even touching 50 miles an hour.
Have to brake pretty hard for some of these corners because if they don't read the line correctly, and the worst thing they can do is follow the rider's line in front. You must make your own mind up as to how this corner is straightening out. So as they descend now and safely, don't forget tomorrow morning 6:30 Eastern, a little bit earlier, the 100th Tour de France continues at the NBC-SN with stage 3. And there's 1 second category climb tomorrow, comes very near the end. And catch prime time coverage every night of the Tour de France at 8 Eastern on the NBC-SN as well. So remember that special time, 6:30. We're with you tomorrow, and a nasty sting in the tail tomorrow as we say goodbye to our 3 days of racing in Corsica. This beautiful island in the sun. We'll be back in a moment. Every year in May, inhabitants of Veneco gather at the country fair, mainly to celebrate and taste the traditional Corsican farm cheeses. Housed at the Veneco Stadium, the tradition of tasting local Brosciu, Bastelli cashew, Vena cheese and Neolinku has been going on for 17 years. Though mostly focused on cheese, locals have the opportunity to sample many local pastries, meats and oils as well. Now that's my kind of place. But for these riders, they can only dream of what might be in a few hours when they sit down to dinner, because these are the 4 leaders on today's stage, hanging on to just a few seconds advantage now. So these boys, Paul, are just, they've gained nothing at the moment. They're kicking up again now, just starting on to the next category climb. David Vellier has been doing most of the work. He's, according to his computer, is 36%. Lars Bohm, 23%. The man doing the least work is Perez, but that's because his teammate's about to lose his lead in the King of the Mountains, I suppose.
But I think that might change once we get to the next part of the course, the 5-kilometer ascent up to the next climb of the day, and that's when we'll see him coming into his own. Ruben Perez is an experienced professional bike rider, and this is an experienced team, Team Euskaltel-Euskadi, representing initially the Basque country. It was very much a Basque philosophy up until the start of this year. During last year's transfer season, they decided to stay on the international circuit, to go to the World Pro Tour level. They needed to bring in some foreign riders.
Well, the scenics here now, it's guaranteed to be beautiful all the way here. Ajaccio itself is a beautiful port town, and the capital as we head down towards that. 5.2 kilometers, just over 3 miles now to the next climb. We're on it to the Col de la Serra. 85 kilometers is the distance we'll have covered by the time we get to the top of it on the day of 156. These are the 4 riders now. We now have a leader in Lars Bohm. We'll see how good he is on this one at the top.
Slightly different climb though, Phil, because the last climb was a steady climb at only 4.5% gradient. This one is much steeper at 7%. There's 5 kilometers now to go to the summit. That's just over 3 miles of racing. Blel Kadri, the rider in the white jersey there from AG Tuari, he's a much better climber, and the steeper gradient I think is going to suit him a bit more.
Well, Bohm may not find this quite to his liking, and it might favour Ruben Perez a little bit more, because we're climbing steadily up the Col de la Serra, and from the Col de la Serra we will go on to the Col de la Vitsavona, which will take us up to just under 4,000 feet, the high spot of the day of racing. We did tell you earlier about that narrow gauge railway. Well, it's with us all the way today, but that was a challenge. They had to build it right across that gorge.
No, it certainly was, and the reason, as I said earlier, Phil, that it is a narrow gauge is because it twists its way up through these mountains, and the turns and the curves have to be very, very tight to gain altitude in a short period of time.
Opened up a little bit. They've got back on the climb. They've added half a minute to their advantage again. A minute 15, and there's a split. And look who's been left behind, Lars Bohm and Ruben Perez.
Well, that's a bit of a surprise to see Perez left behind like that, and that's all because of the acceleration of Blel Kadri. You can see him in the white jersey. He is a very good climber. He's climbed high in the overall standings of races like the Giro d'Italia, and he's taken the advantage of the gradient to split this group. But they do realise now that the speed and the impetus in the main field is also eating into their advantage. The peloton is about a minute and a quarter behind, and now it's the FDJ team, Francis de Jeux team, a very young team, a team that's been developed by Marc Madio, a two-time winner of the one-day classic Paris-Roubaix, who's put this squad together. They've got a bunch of young guys, 21, 22, 23 years of age.
Nice to see that we've got two of the French teams in this race, totally French riders on their squads, which is a chance for the French. They've never won the Tour de France since Bernard Hinault back in 1985.
Well, FDJ, not only did they have the 10th place finisher in the Tour de France last year in Thibaut Pinot, but they've also got a very good sprinter. So maybe they too want to nullify this attack, because Nasser Bouhanni, at 20 years of age last year, was the French national champion. This year he didn't win that title again, but he is participating in the Tour and hoping to have a crack at some of these sprint victories.
But he did get placed, and he was in trouble yesterday. He got involved in all the crashes like all the sprinters did, so he lost his chance yesterday. We'll see how he goes this time, but right now they split. That's good news to the peloton if they know that the boys up front are cracking and infighting. But there's no doubt about the Canadian, David Vellier, because this boy is on terrific form. He says he's never had form like it. It's his first Tour de France, and now he just can't contain himself as he pushes on with a pretty strong rider here, Blel Kadri, a three-time Tour rider, done it all before. And the first timers willing to learn from him for the moment as they push on. Mark Cavendish again slipping to the back of the field on the climb. So Mark just looks down. He knows he's always going to be in trouble, but he also can suffer, this man. Remember his stage in Paul into Aubenas, which was a really tough climb just before the finish, and he held on there, and I think he raced that at his best stage win.
Yep, I think he certainly does, because it was a stage that nobody expected him to be able to get over the climb. But you can see here he's getting dropped. Maybe it's only 3 kilometers to go to the summit of the Col de la Serra, but the problem is there's another 5 kilometer climb straight after that. It's not as if these are two separate climbs. They're two climbs bolted together.
But it doesn't all well for that nasty little climb, which comes about 12 kilometers from the finish later on, because that's going to mean that the sprinters may not get back.
Well, it's Koen de Kort now, number 193, and this could very well be the tactic of FDJ. They realize that they need to use this climb here to try and get rid of the sprinters, but you know, those sprinters like Mark Cavendish, they won't panic at this moment. They will just try and survive, limit their losses on the climb, hope they've got a few teammates alongside them on the run in towards the finish, and try and get back into the fold. But I did notice the Thomas Vogler there has moved right to the front end of the pack. As soon as he saw the shape of the race changing, he bolted up through the outside to put himself into the first 25.
I'll tell you what, David Vellier here is hurting Blel Kadri. Kadri can't lift the pace up anymore, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Vellier go alone towards the end of this stage, if that's the way it's going to be for him, because I don't think Kadri can stay with him much longer.
Well, it's about half a minute to the two chasers and a minute to the main field, so 30 seconds separating all of these groups, and very shortly, once we get to the straighter part of this climb, the peloton will start to see the back wheels of these two riders. But it's great to have seen Lars Bohm, because over the last couple of days, Phil, he has been a real aggressor in the opening stage of the 100th edition of the Tour de France.
Yes, the game is up for these two. The dancing's over. It's time to get back into the behind the scenes there, and there's an
Thomas
attack,
Vogler.
and that's your man. Thomas Vogler has gone. Well, we saw him at the back, and then now he's decided this might be a stage he could win.
Yesterday, he sat at the back end of the main field for almost the entire stage. Over the early part of today's stage, he's been just sitting there at the back, not getting involved in any of the changes of acceleration at the front end of the race. This is Tony Martin. He's in pain and he's in difficulty, but he knows that if he can get through today's stage and get through tomorrow's stage, his body will start to recover. But the acceleration now at the front is having a serious effect.
It most certainly is, and Danny Van Poppel in trouble here as well in the white jersey, the 19-year-old. He's a sprinter, and they're also, this race is now splitting asunder here because Konstantin Sitsu's gone through, one of the strong men at Sky, also off the back.
Yeah, there's the yellow jersey as well in difficulty. They knew that if they were going to get rid of the sprinters, this was the climb when they had to do it. They had to put the hammer down. He is in serious pain, Marcel Kittel here. First German to wear the yellow jersey since 2007, and Thomas Voeckler has gone past the two men in no man's land currently. He's going to try and make the contact with the leading group of riders, and bear in mind one of them is his teammate Velu, and that will be a very big coup for Team Europcar.
Was it a plan, one might ask? Does Velu know that he was going to attack and try and join him on that climb? A little bit of picture breakup. I did warn you, might get it in the trees, but it shouldn't affect us too much. The yellow jersey, he's a sprinter. We didn't expect him to survive to the end, but this climb, because of the speed they've gone up, because of that lift to the pace by Tommy Voeckler, that really has broken up this gap now. Pressure of the my usual.
Well, the thing to do now, Phil, is not to panic. It's to stay in contact with a couple of teammates. We're looking at the two leaders. That's Velu in second position. Blel Kadri now has gone to the front, but I'm fairly certain that Velu will know that his teammate is coming across. Look at a face on Marcel Kittel. He's enjoyed the first part of his day in the yellow jersey, but he's not having a lot of fun just now.
Well, at the moment, Kittel is in trouble, and the rest of the field under the pressure of the Française des Jeux, the FDJ team, but Tommy Voeckler hasn't had none of that. He's searching now for his own teammate, and there he is, David Villiers. So, as they continue, wait till Tommy Voeckler comes round that corner as they'll cheer him up to the leaders. So we're looking at Tommy Voeckler here. He's catapulted away from the main field. He's picked up two of the riders. He's about to join his teammate at the front now, which is David Villiers and Blel Kadri. At the back, the sprinters have exploded. Mark Cavendish has gone. Marcel Kittel, as we can see here, is going rather rapidly backwards as his teammates try to guide him up. Roy Curvers is the man, and it's all because of the pacemaking set by the French FDJ team.
Yes, well, FDJ obviously came out with a plan here this afternoon. Had a 10th place finisher last year in Thibaut Pinot. They've got the very good sprinter on their squad, Nasser Bouhanni, and I think that's why they realized they needed to give the bit of dynamite to their race this afternoon to try and get rid of as many sprinters as possible from that group, because the tempo that the sprinters teams were putting into place was putting everybody to sleep a little bit. They were having a comfortable ride through the middle of the island of Corsica. Then all of a sudden they said, let's put the hammer down. The two leaders now have got themselves being chased very, very rapidly by the man who has worn the yellow jersey on 20 occasions, Thomas Voeckler. And, you know, we should have realized that he was looking for some form in the early part of this year's tour, because he just recently won the Route du Sud in the southern part of France on the slopes of the Pyrenees, indicating that he was already coming into good form.
Well, recovering from injury too in the Spring Classics, but now the peloton, they are climbing very quickly here. A lot of these riders will be unshipping at the back because of their pain from the injuries yesterday as well, and they'll need time to recover from that. It just is one of those, of course, is Tony Martin, the World Time Trial champion. These are the boys in blue setting the pace. As we see the Basque flag flying there right now, let's go back to Steve Perino inside the race, TireRack.com. Steve.
Well, Phil, we have dropped back along with Mark Cavendish, who seems to be about 3 switchbacks now behind the main peloton. And Cavendish has the support of now 6 teammates. We understand Tony Martin's also beginning to drop back. Maybe not to help just because he's suffering. So only Chavanel remains in the peloton. Additionally, 2 guys from Argo Shimano unable to help Kittel because they are in here with Omega Pharma Quickstep.
Well, thanks, Steve, as we've moved right up towards the summit of the climb now, where there's a massive crowd, and Blel Kadri is showing a clean pair of wheels just at the moment. I think probably Vellier has been told to fall back and link up with his teammate, Tommy Vauclair. So this is now Tommy Vauclair here trying to seek out the back wheel of his teammate David Vellier as we continue up through this corridor of noise now. This flamboyant Frenchman never lets his country down. He was desperately worried he wouldn't get fit again for the Tour de France after injury, but he has done. And now he's turning the style on here. He is not planning a breakaway here. He's planning to win the stage.
Well, he had a nasty start to the year with a broken collarbone in a crash in the Amstel Gold Race. And I wonder if Vellier did not sit up and let Blel Kadri go clear so he could join forces with Thomas Vauclair and bring Vauclair up to the front end of the race. The main field now hovering at around about a minute in arrears. This is a terrible climb here because it's one of those awful climbs where you don't actually have a descent afterwards to recover. There's a little bit of a false flat in the middle for about a kilometre or so, and then it will kick up again to the high spot of today's stage, just inside of 4,000 feet.
Kadri here keeps looking over his shoulder. Could do with the 2 points. But they put him equal first in the King of the Mountains, with Lars Bohm was back in the field. Probably wondering, that's my feeling too, Paul, but we've lost a camera on David Vellier.
Vauclair's going nowhere. There's the main fielder. FDJ are now very much in control in their new blue jerseys. Normally it's a team that rides in white jerseys at the Tour de France. They decided just before the start of the Tour to change that. You're allowed to change in colour during the course of a season. You have to announce it to the World Championships, to the international governing body. And there's the top of the mountain there. That's 2 points for Blel Kadri. And behind, Thomas Vauclair's attempt is not going to succeed this time.
Well, we're presuming that we've still got Vellier in second place. We've lost track of him just for the minute. We'll find out very shortly, in which case there's no points for Vauclair. But if he is climbing in second place, he may have passed his teammate. 57 seconds is the gap. It looks as though, in fact, we didn't see it, or at least I didn't see it, but Vauclair has passed Vellier, and he's now back in the bunch. So it is 1 point for Tommy Vauclair if he can get there, but I wouldn't suspect he is going to get there for that second place, because the team of Française des Jeux are going to catch him in sight of the line. Here comes the wipeout. So he's been passed by a hard-working Française des Jeux, who are determined here now to break up this race, and they've done some good damage on this climb. Oh, there is Vellier. The computer's telling us he's been caught, but is he gonna? He's gone through the second place position. So now it's time to just go back, be sensible, as the field rejoins here, leaving just one man out in front.
Well, third place rider there in that line of riders, of course, was Arthur Vichot, the French national champion. FDJ are doing a phenomenal job here, but having a little bit of a difficulty there. You can see the man who wears the green jersey there. That's Christoffersen. Everybody is having a hard time here this afternoon.
So the four men in the breakaway shared the points there, which means that Lars Bohm and Blel Kadri are the joint leaders now in the King of the Mountains with 2 points apiece. And the rider we caught there in green jersey was Alexander Christophe. He got the sprint second place yesterday. So overall in the King of the Mountains now, Kadri has 2 points. Vellier gets 1 on that climb. So we've got 2 leaders. It goes to countbacks of the King of the Mountains climbs. You win if it has to be decided that way. But for the moment, Kadri and Bohm, 2 points apiece.
Yes, but the next climb of the day is a second category climb, the Col de Lisavona. That has 5 points available. So the first man to go over the top of there, if he's not scored any points up to now, will be the new leader. The sprinters now are seriously on the defensive.
Well, concentration, but he won't give up hope here. He'll be living in hope that they will ease back a little bit on the descents, because they've all more or less been picked up, just the one breakaway, and he'll have to rely heavily on his teammates. Roy Curvis is with him there to try and pace him back up to the peloton and do it all again on the upcoming second category climb now, which takes us over 3,800 feet. Again, the gradients stay pretty much the same, but the speed they climb that one, we could see some real damage on this next climb.
Some serious damage, because this climb is a little bit harder than the previous one. We're looking at 4.5 kilometers, and again, 7% the average gradient. It kicks up a couple of times to 8 or 9%. FDJ, the young team from France, has really done some serious damage.
Yep, they just told him that he's on his own. The bunch has regrouped and picked everybody up behind. So nothing to do now but to hope as he continues on the lead by himself. So as Blel Kadri now blazes a lone trail here towards the biggest climb of the day. Life for the yellow jersey is not any good for him today now. The dream has gone. The sprinter has had a wonderful start to the Tour de France, but today he's simply got to survive. The other face of the Tour de France. First indications of what is to come in the 100th edition of the Tour de France as we got on to the steepest climb so far on day 2, the Col de la Serra. The sprinters immediately threw in the towel and went out the back door. Blel Kadri, the experienced 3-time riding tour, has broken clear, and the peloton are assembling some 27 seconds back. The Maillot Jaune of Kittel is looking for around 3 minutes now. Well, he's in amongst the trees here. This particularly nice climb, this one. That's if you're not riding the Tour de France, of course. As Blel Kadri here has to keep the pressure on. He's defending very little over the peloton right now.
27 seconds, but the damage is being done at the back end of the race. A lot of riders have been eliminated. A lot of the sprinters have been eliminated. And they will, it depends how the race evolves from here on in. There's only one team putting that pressure on, it's FDJ. Now, once they catch this leader, they've got a long way to go to the finish if they want to conserve the advantage of the damage they've done over the sprinters' teams.
Well, some big sprinters still behind. Christophe, who was placed yesterday in second. Cavendish, the big sprinter from Great Britain. Third, Stegman's all behind the race at the moment. The yellow jersey itself, and indeed the man who was third yesterday, Boy Van Poppel, the teenager who's wearing the white jersey. They've all lost ground, and they're all around about 2.5 minutes behind the main field. Might still get back, but you've got to take your hat off here. FDJ are certainly riding to a plan. They wouldn't be doing this with all of the team if they weren't.
No, they've done some serious damage at FDJ at this point of the race, and this is one of the major casualties, the man who won the stage yesterday, Marcel Kittel. And they obviously realized that the word came out from their man, and that, of course, was Marc Madio, and he would have given the order to really put the hammer down to eliminate them. Only 7 kilometers of the race here, the last really difficult 7 kilometers, was where the most damage could be done.
Well, I'm just trying to work out what their plan is, because I can't believe their sprinter, Nasser Bahani, is still in that front group. I would have thought he joined everybody else in the chase. So the only plan I can think is that one of the opportunists in that team is Pierrick Fedrigo. He's already won stages in Gap Tarbes, and he's also won twice in Po. He is an opportunist. If he's feeling good, this would be a perfect stage finish for him to wind it up. So we'll see if they're trying to launch him. Fedrigo's in his 10th Tour de France.
The only problem is I've noticed Fedrigo has been doing a fair bit of the pacemaking at the front of the group with his other teammates. The best placed rider yesterday, by the way, was Thibaut Pinot in 57th.
Well, Pinot is also their rider for the long-term shot. He's the leader of the squad, and if they can steal a march over Chris Froome on these stages when they're not perhaps paying as much attention as they might, yeah, good start for the Frenchman.
Blel Kadri now, you see those shoulders starting to rock. That's an indicator that the pain is starting to come in. The power is starting to go out of his body. And very shortly, I think he's going to get caught by the remnants of the main field. That's quite a large main field still. But as you can see, 20 seconds, 3 minutes, 19 seconds. Back to the leader of the King of the Mountains competition, the leader of the white jersey competition and the yellow jersey. I think it's job done by FDJ this afternoon, but the question is, we're going to get a big question mark as to who's going to be the new leader of the tour tonight.
Might take some working out, because if two riders finish together, it goes on countback as to where they finished yesterday. The only time we'll know the winner in front of camera is if he gains time over everybody else, because everybody given the same time yesterday. And he's sticking to his guns, but an awful lot of motorbikes coming round that bottom bend, so shortly to be followed by the riders, I would suspect. Plenty of cheers from the Corsicans. This climb's taking us up to 3,800 feet at the moment, as you can see the beautiful woody countryside at this altitude. Peloton still under the escort of FDJ, including their French champion in the red shorts, Arthur Vichot. 4.6 kilometers from the summit now of the high point of the day, takes us up to 3,800 feet. We go further down the mountain to locate the sprinters. They've been uncoupled from the train. Marcel Kittel is riding just on 2.5 minutes back, and it looks as though they've got a problem for the leader. Can you believe that? Blel Kadri is being picked up because his bike has seized up with the gears.
Well, that was a little bit of bad luck for him. He was at 20 seconds advantage over the main peloton. The big question mark now is, Phil, now that they've caught this lone leader, what is going to be the response of the peloton? But Blel Kadri's not going to give up at all. He's got that little bit of energy coming for the from the adrenaline from having to stop at the side of the road. He said, I'm going to keep going.
Well, he's got back on, put his head down again. Mark Cavendish, by the way, is also back there. He's been dropped, so too is Boy Van Poppel, the other sprinter in the white jersey. Most of the sprinters have been set back, but the one that hasn't is Peter Sagan. He's still in the main group.
Well, Sagan is the big favourite and was the big favourite at the start of the day, but it all depended on how the race was going to handle this big climb of the day. Up until about 3 kilometres to go to the summit of the previous climb, they'd got at a nice steady tempo, and none of the sprinters were put under pressure until this happened.
Well, the peloton just being guided along nicely here by the FGJ team and TireRack.com inside the race. Here we go again. Steve, how are you doing back there?
Well, I'm doing fine because I don't have to turn the pedals over, but I can tell you that Mark Cavendish is suffering. Currently, I'm right behind the yellow jersey group, and I can only guess that Mark Cavendish has to be several minutes. He's in a different zip code than these guys. The entire team of Omega Pharma Quickstep, with the exception of Chavanel, is now back there with them. He has been joined by Tony Martin, as I alluded to earlier. Tony Martin maybe not coming back by choice. When I looked at Tony Martin, he was absolutely drenched in sweat in a way I haven't seen any other rider. You can imagine his body doing two jobs right now. One, it's trying to heal. The other, it's just trying to survive the climb.
Absolutely right, and this is a tough day. The only thing in his favour is the sun is out and it's quite pleasantly warm. As we look here at Blel Kadri, almost caught, trying to accelerate away again. If he can just get to the top of this climb before they catch him, he gets 5 points and he gets a King of the Mountains leader's jersey. And I'm sure that's why he chose not to wait for the peloton once he got that bike changed. He's looking very, very tired right now. He's not too far to go. He's about 3 kilometres from the top, 2.5 kilometres from the top of the Vitsavona. Doesn't sound very far. When you're going uphill, it's an awful long way here. But it looks to me as though things are calming down just a tad. But look in the middle there. Andy Schleck is right up at the front and looking very, very good. Well, the ambition here, Paul, is 5 points, 2 kilometres nearly to go to the top for Kadri, and he'll be the next leader of the King of the Mountains. Mark Cavendish has gone even further back now. He's not with the yellow jersey group at all. He is riding quite a considerable distance behind the yellow jersey chase group. situation at the top will be 5, 3, 2 and 1, first 4 riders, and any one position would do for Victor Bona and for Kadri. Roy Curvis there is going too fast for him, and he's calling his teammate to slow down for it.
We might have heard somebody shout "Allez, allez" at the side of the road. Well, that's a French word for go, go. And that's the word that is adopted by most of the fans in this part of the world to encourage the riders. The gradient we're getting to at the moment is 6.5% average gradient. Blel Kadri, he really has decided he's going to take the bull by the horns this afternoon. He's fighting to get himself those 5 points at the top of the climb, because that will take him comfortably over the next day or so in the King of the Mountains Leaders competition. Arthur Vischer there in the red, white and blue. Another move coming from Europcar.
This looks like might be Pierre Roland who started going away here. The boy in green who started the move. The 0-1-2 on the Europcar team. They've had a very, very busy day, I must say. And this is their team man for the high finish. Now, I should expect to see reaction from the favourites like Contador, Chris Froome, if he starts to make any progress at all. If you can get up to Blel Kadri, Kadri can work with him and could still lead the King of the Mountains tonight, but I think it would be the winner of this if they were both equal on points.
Well, 2 Alpine victories. Look at that. He's come straight across the gap, Pierre Roland.
So
he won
easy.
the Alpe d'Huez stage in 2011. He won La Toussuire in 2012. I'm surprised to see a contender make a move like this, but bear in mind, Phil, that Europcar have not yet decided whether or not they're going to re-sign their sponsorship for next season. So any advantage that these guys can get in a race like this, even the lead in the King of the Mountains competition, is good stuff to take forward to the sponsors.
Well, my theory that Fedrigo might be doing well has gone to the wall now, because that was him being dropped by the peloton, as we've seen another attack coming here from Sojusen.
Could have been Bryce Fellou, a man making his way back to the top of the sport. Well, there you can see 1 kilometre now to go to the summit. Pierre Roland, I do not think, Phil, will try and ride away from the peloton this afternoon. He'll try and get himself a maximum 5 points over the top of the climb. It's too far to go to the finish, so his only goal here must be the King of the Mountains jersey. Now, all of a sudden, Team Sky at 1 kilometre to go have decided to take control of the peloton, and this is their man Kirienka.
Kirienka just holding steady, looking good for Pierre Roland, the Frenchman here. Second day in Corsica and a French leader in the King of the Mountains, because 5 points will do him well. Clearly, Europcar had a plan today, which all began with David Vellier, and then from Voigtler, and now from Roland.
Well, Roland can't be much more than a couple of 100 metres away from the summit of this climb, and 5 points in his back pocket. Thank you very much. But behind, I did notice, very close to the front end of the main field, a certain Andy Schleck was riding quite comfortably in this year's Tour de France.
Yes, he's gone off our frame at the moment, but I also spotted him up there. He may be holding a big secret to this Tour de France right now. But as we're watching here, Pierre Roland head up towards the summit, 5 points in the bag. And just like that, he'll be the next leader in the King of the Mountains. And the French will be delighted.
Quick check over his shoulder there to see what sort of a gap he was holding on. 20 seconds. That corresponds to about 300 metres advantage. They will have him in their sights currently, but all he's got to do now is hold on for another 20 seconds or so himself, and he'll cross that line in first place. And then a long, long descent and a lot of respite.
You're right, it was Brice Fellou who came up, and he's joined Blel Kadri here.
Now, Kadri holds on to second place there, Phil, over the top of this climb. It's going to be very, very close.
Kadri goes equal on points now, but will not wear the jersey because this is a second category climb, and the winner of that, if there's a draw, will take the lead overall. But Kadri has got second. The crowd got in the way of Brice Fellou there. They'll have to do with third.
Well, poor old Kadri, he tried to get himself that, but that's let's not forget, Phil, there is one more climb available on the day with 2 and 1 points available. But you can see now these guys are taking this very, very serious. Cadel Evans in the lime green shoes in the middle, and the gap about 34 seconds to the main field.
Kirienka taking that for Sky, but there was no competition there for the 4th place. It was simply he was the pace man there as he goes over the top. He gets a point. More importantly, though, for the moment, it's Roland and Kadri equal in the King of the Mountains competition with 5 points apiece. Some interesting moves coming here today, Paul. One or two riders and their teams have come out with definite plans to try and control this stage.
Yeah, but the yellow jersey, Phil, more than 5 minutes in arrears. I cannot believe that a man who is using a lot of road there, Pierre Roland, at the front end of this race, I cannot believe that he will continue with this battle in the early part of the Tour de France, because this is a guy who has high hopes of finishing high up in the overall standings, and he could be wasting a lot of energy on the 2nd day of the 100th edition of the Tour de France. We're now going down a less technical descent here. We will be pushing on occasions at speeds between 55 and 60 miles an hour while still on the slopes of the climb. Marcel Kittel's enjoyment of the day in yellow is about to end.
Well, I think that's it. Just behind Kittel there was, in fact, the young rider, 19-year-old Danny Van Poppel in the white jersey. But the British champions jersey of Mark Cavendish even further behind. We've lost location of it at the moment, but he's quite a way behind the yellow jersey reportedly. The result of the King of the Mountains, Roland gets the 5 points, Kadri gets 3. They've both got 5 points now in the overall standings. Now watch this as he almost scrapes his elbows on the wall. This road docks down. There's a sharp hairpin bend to the right coming up as he continues down the valley. Just flicking his bikes here as he takes the best lines on the corner. If he rides this properly, you're going to talk here to speeds of around about 45 miles an hour as he continues his way down to the valley below. It's a long, long descent, this, believe me, before we go on into the town of Ajaccio. We'll see you in a moment. Well, as you rejoin us, Jean-Christophe Perrault has just had a problem here. He's number 81 and he's doing a bike change, and he was in the chase peloton, which has virtually pulled back Feliu and Kadri, but not Pierre Roland. We're still on the descent where we were. We just flicked off the descent onto a little climb. But the top man on the La Mondiale team, AG2R, which is rather poetic justice, I suppose, because Kadri is on the same team as Perrault. Now there's the capture. Kadri on the far left and Bryce Feliu both back in the pack. Now it's all against this man now, Pierre Roland, the winner of the white jersey a couple of years ago when he shot to fame in 2011 by finishing 10th. That prompted the French to say this is a man to win the Tour in the future, and he's among the favourites. He's not an outstanding favourite, but he's certainly among the favourites to win the Tour. And he's taken his chance today. So for that reason, Sky are driving the chase. They do not want to give anybody any time that can be claimed back later in the Tour. American flags high as we go under the banner of the Col de la Visavona with the yellow jersey, and he's a long way back here, just on 6 minutes since the leader Pierre Roland went across the top. So the sprinters will have to live to fight another day now, because they will not be rejoining the head of the race. The yellow jersey is up for grabs in Ajaccio.
It certainly is, and it's going to be a massive battle. It's going to be very difficult to try and work out, because everybody who is in that group at the moment is in exactly the same time. Pierre Roland, he knows he's got a very long way to ride, but you know, early on this year, Phil, he won himself the Circuit de la Sarthe after winning one of the stages, so this is an audacious move.
Well, this man is dreaming of yellow tonight, and he's still got 53 kilometers to go. Sky on the front here as the descent continues unabating down here. They've wiped out everybody except Pierre Roland, and he is not that far ahead. He's only a handful of seconds. Over 6 minutes now back to the group containing Mark Cavendish, slightly less to the group containing the yellow jersey. Those two groups should come back together.
We'll just have a quick look at Kirienka on the front here, Phil. I have to say, I think this brings a whole new meaning to fast food, because he's actually eating at 50 miles an hour going downhill on a bike in the Tour de France.
It's a long way down. Take your time now, because very shortly we're going to find that last little climb, which is in the last 16 kilometers. So they've got time at the moment. some 36 kilometres still to ride to that little blip on the radar. But just this man knows how to drop his bike down a mountain, Paul. He's reading these corners perfectly.
Well, he is, and when you go down a descent like this, you've got to try and get as much of an apex into your descent as possible. You see how he moves across to the right-hand side of the road, then he cuts across the apex of the corner. The idea is to keep the impetus as high as possible and not to use your brakes if you can get through that corner without having to slow down at all and keeping your pace nice and high. Speeds are on average down these descents are 40 to 50 miles an hour. And quick look over his shoulder there for Pierre Rolland just to see if he could make contact with where the main field is. Well, I can tell him he's 35 seconds in advance of the main field currently. And just for fun, if I wanted to throw this in, here in this town of Boccagnano, they have the Fiera di Castagna, which is the fair of the chestnuts, and they do that every year in the first weekend of December.
All part of the Corsica Regional National Park here on the island of Corsica as the Tour de France continues its second day on this island. Last day tomorrow.
This is Perrault, Jean-Francois Perrault. He just had that mechanical incident a few moments ago. You see how the cars pull out of the way there. Look, when you're a race car driver in something like the Tour de France, you've got to have eyes in the back of your head to be aware that the riders are coming back into the main field. These are all very, very good drivers. They keep a very good close eye on where the position of the riders coming back into the main field are.
And as the winter snows melt away, as the lovely waterfall there continues, that is La Vallée de la Mariée.
Well, I'll put it into English for you. That's the Bride's Veil. Apparently there's a very interesting legend there because a rich man wanted to marry a penniless girl, and her father came in and chased them away from the church, and where she fell, they say that waterfall sprung.
Well, I live and learn on the Tour de France, that's for sure. I did note that BMC have sent their new champion of Switzerland, Michael Schaar, up to the front. This is Pierre Rolland on the front. Now, in case you've forgotten, he did win a stage of the Tour de France in La Toussuire. He also won on Alpe d'Huez, and this is how he did it. Stage 19 in the 2011 Tour de France, the climb of Alpe d'Huez. This was huge at the time for Pierre Rolland. He was announcing his presence as a top bike rider. He went on to win the white jersey and finished 10th in the Tour de France. Now we're seeing him in action again to try and win a third stage of the Tour de France down in Ajaccio, and in the 100th edition. That's what he's trying to do now, and he's showing us he's not afraid of going downhill quickly. He's taking a little bit of risk, but then he's on his own. He can see the road, but you know, the gap is only around about 30 seconds. That is not very far. As we continue, let's take a break. And as you rejoin us, the catch is on here. Pierre Rolland decided to sit up, take a bite to eat, and watch the catch. Now, the chase has all been accomplished by Team Cannondale and Team BMC, with Sky in the stalls watching every move in the black there. And so Cannondale are doing the chasing because they've got Peter Sagan here. And if Sagan can get maximum points today at the finish in the green jersey, while Mark Cavendish and Marcel Kittel wallow behind the race, that will be a very, very good score. There's Tony Galopin. He's done very well to hang on today to this peloton. The champion of France there, Arthur Bichot. He's also riding extremely well. Just in front of him is Peter Kennog, number 3 from Sky. He's the new boy on the tour for Sky this year. Let's check in again with you, Steve Perino at TireRack.com. Let's go inside the race. What have you got?
We are flying down the hillside. I wanted to fall back to check on the gap that Omega Pharma Quick Step and, of course, Mark Cavendish and Tony Martin had behind the yellow jersey. It is 4 minutes and 40 seconds. I can tell you that they are a complete team, which might be somewhat advantageous on this harrowing descent. In order to catch them, we were watching some of the lorries that pick up the broken down vehicles. They were in 4-wheel skids. We're going about 50 miles an hour, and they are all together right now trying to get the chase on. But again, 4 minutes and 40 seconds back of the yellow jersey and 10 minutes roughly behind the group.
Wow, that is a big gap, so that could mean him finishing more than 10 minutes behind today. It's not serious. He's not here to win the Tour de France. Mark Cavendish is here to win stages. But that's a big drop here. He suffered really on that big second category climb today. Well, at the moment, Paul, Mark Cavendish is riding over 4 minutes behind the yellow jersey group, so now he's 10 minutes behind the leaders of the race just now. So, but his whole team have gone back for him. He's got 5 teammates trying to help him get through.
Well, it's going to be a tall order to try and pull back that amount of time on the running down towards the finish. But the fact is, it was FDJ, the French team, Phil, that came up with the plan there to split this race. If they'd been lulled into that security, the false sense of security that the sprinters' teams were trying to impose on the main field, and they'd gone over those climbs easily, Cavendish and the other sprinters could quite easily have survived. But FDJ said, no, we're not having any of that at all, and they're the ones who split the race.
Shots here of the yellow jersey now. He knows his job is over for the day, and his yellow jersey will be changed for Team Strip tonight as Marcel Kittel wallows about 6 minutes back. As we switch back up to the leaders now, still driving down the race here. Let me remind you, the NBC Sports Fantasy Cycling Challenge is back again, and you can sign up, select your teams, and this year, thanks to thefeed.com, if you win, Christian van der Velde will visit your home, go for a ride, plus, of course, there's daily prizes like today's featured prize, a Bob Roll signed American Classic jersey. It's all at nbcsports.com/challenge. Enjoy that competition as we get back into the leading group here now. BMC drive on here. They know that this could be the first of the cards being played in this year's Tour de France. They're racing now for real time.
The Tour de France on NBCSN is brought to you by Road ID. Enter to win a VIP trip to the 2014 Tour de France at roadid.com/TDF. By First Endurance, use the promo code TDF at firstendurance.com for 20% off any order and a chance to win a signed jersey. By Specialized, innovators of S-Works bicycles and equipment. S-Works, made in racing. And by Gotcha.
NBC Sports coverage of Stage 2 is presented by Competitive Cyclist, your source for pro-caliber bicycles, apparel and accessories. Fuel your passion at competitivecyclist.com. As the riders race down alongside the River Gravona now on this second day of the Tour de France. 97 miles in total. We're running out of miles for the day, and there's a very select big peloton still at the front of the race. Most of the sprinters, but not all, have been dispatched to the back of the race today. Gone Marcel Kittel, gone is Boy Van Poppel, gone is Mark Cavendish. They won't be coming back. And Peter Sagan is in this leading group. So once we continue this descent for quite a little way yet, then there's a little blip on the radar. It's just over half a mile, a very, very steep climb, which will certainly crack the peloton. But it still leaves about 7 miles to run to the finish. Arthur Vichot on the rest here now. These are the boys that did the damage on Team FDJ on that climb of the Vitsavona. Whether it worked out or not, I'm not too sure now, because the field is regrouped. Looks like the yellow jersey group here is coming back up behind the field. Now, has he rejoined the main field? I don't think so, no. He's rejoining another group up front. Let's go back out on the race with TireRack.com inside the race. Steve Perino, are you still enjoying Corsica, Steve?
Well, you know, I didn't look around too much in that descent because we were doing about 60 miles an hour along again with Mark Cavendish. The guys are screaming, and you can imagine they want to hear everything, see everything in order to manage the road. And a short while ago, Jean-Francois Pichot, he got on the headset to basically yell at the helicopter pilot to say, you got to back off the road because none of the guys can hear what's going on. Of course, I got that information from my driver, Patrice Diallo, who's been on the circuit for many, many years. And he said when the guys can't hear what's going on, they can't hear the braking. And when you can't hear the braking, you don't know what's going on in front of you.
Absolutely right. And the helicopter's pulled off probably to the left or right of the riders because the down blast and the rotors also can affect the race. Well, the yellow jersey here has joined a group which was ahead of him on the road. So it's made quite a big bunch here now. He's not going to make any serious effort now. The day's lost as far as he's concerned, getting across the gap. Quite a few Sky riders. Geraint Thomas is caught in this group as well. I've just seen him. There's the erstwhile king of the mountains, Labato, who is now in this group as well. So we just have a look, and there is the green jersey of Danny Van Poppel. No, sorry, that's Kesiakov who is there in that green jersey. Alexander Kristoff in that green jersey there, Paul. They've all been caught out except Peter Sagan. He's still up the road.
Well, that's what we expected. There was always the chance that the main field was going to go easily over those first two climbs of the day, but it took a young French team, FDJ, to set the race on fire. Peter Sagan was the name that most people uttered this morning when asked for a favourite for today's stage, and for the moment he's in a very good position. He's got a number of teammates in the group to support him, and they've only come to this race for one reason, that is to support Peter Sagan. No Vincenzo Nibali, no Basso. It's all about Peter Sagan and trying to defend the green jersey points competition.
Yellow jersey's got his hand up here. We just briefly saw setting the pace of BMC. That was Brent Buckwalter, the American, driving it at the front, doing his job well. Kittel wants his team car, probably wants a drink, I would think. This is slipping to slowly be a race which is just being content to ride to the finish. They're not chasing anymore. And Mark Cavendish is reportedly a couple of minutes behind that yellow jersey group. But if they do slow down, that group with Cavendish in might well rejoin, and they'll all ride in together. This is where the race is today, and from this group it could well be maybe 10, 20, 30 riders will get away on this last climb and work together. And for that reason, Team Sky are riding with what's left of the team, because Geraint Thomas is in the back group, riding near the front with BMC, because they've got Chris Froome right up here at the head of the race.
It's an ideal situation for them. No major panic on board, but I think BMC have got another tactic in the back of their mind. Yes, they want to win the Tour de France again with Cadel Evans. They've also got the American TJ Van Garderen in the back, just in case anything goes wrong. Brent Buckwalter doing a great job of work at the front to keep the pace nice and high. But I think today, Phil, in the back of their minds, they might be thinking about a stage victory for the world champion. And that, of course, Philippe Gilbert.
And the first of the year, that would be great. Well, it'd certainly be great for Philippe Gilbert, wouldn't it, at the moment? Now, let me remind you our Road ID pop quiz. It's time for the Road ID quiz. For answers to the previous day's questions, go to roadid.com. Today's question: which female American cyclist has won 2 Olympic gold medals? And she's just recently retired, so there's a clue. Head on over to roadid.com/TDF to answer and get entered to win daily prizes and a VIP trip to Paris for next year's Tour de France. Brief glimpse there of Chris Froome. He's being kept right up at the front here, just in case this race does split on this little last climb to come, and he wants to make sure he can go forward. Same reason for Cadel Evans. He is up there as well. Haven't seen Contador, but I'm quite sure he also is in this very select group of riders going to Ajaccio today. Ah, what are those? Pink tortoises. I've heard of pink elephants, but not pink tortoises.
Welcome back to NBCSN's coverage of the 100th Tour de France as we make our way into Ajaccio. Alongside Scott Moniger, Bob Roll, I'm Todd Harris. Glad to have you with us. We'll have you covered tonight on Tour Primetime. Scott, what has impressed you so far here in stage number 2?
You know, I think we're going to see a polar opposite of what we saw last year with the number of jersey changes. Last year we only had 1 jersey change in the entire 3-week tour. Today, I think we're going to see a jersey change at the end of the stage, different rider in the yellow jersey, and that's going to be 2 for 2.
Phil and Paul were talking about Peter Sagan being the guy today. Do you agree with him?
Most certainly. You can see how versatile and how gifted a cyclist Peter Sagan is today. All the sprinters have been dropped. The climbers have been going for the king of the mountain points, and the sprinter most capable of staying with them on the hilly stages is Peter Sagan. He stands a great chance to win today's stage, and it shows you how difficult it is to win the green jersey, the points competition, for anybody else. So dominant in that competition. I think we might see Peter Sagan in the green jersey for a long time to come.
The drive from Bastia is beautiful. The ride on your bike, it's a little more grueling. Coming up tonight, Tour Primetime, 8 p.m. tonight. We'll break down this stage. We'll ask Bob Key, and we'll preview Stage 3, our final stage on Corsica, as we take the road to Calvi. Right now, let's send it back to Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin.
Thanks, Todd. Bob and Scott, he knows his stuff, that Bob Roll, doesn't he? As we watch here, the teammates of Peter Sagan sitting at the front there, riding their hearts out in the hope that their man can take care at the end of the race. But as I keep reminding you, there is this climb to come which could change the whole face of the race. We'll have a very, very dramatic chase down, that's for sure, towards the finish. The yellow jersey, by the way, is now 7 minutes plus behind. Looking at the yellow jersey, the maillot jaune of the Tour de France. He won't need to wash it tonight because he'll lose it tonight. Marcel Kittel, 7.5 minutes behind the race. It'll be a lot more than that by the finish. There's no point in trying to say seconds now when minutes are what the situation is. He's probably just checking. Now, what's happened here? There's somebody. Another bike change for AG2, are there? They've had their ups and downs on the race today. Jean-Christophe Perrault was the rider before. Has he changed back? This looks like Perrault. It is, yes. It is. So he may have changed back bikes there, Paul. I'm not too sure. Or he's had another problem.
Just having a quick look there now. He's got himself back onto the wheel of his teammate.
Busy ride.
A side view. Yeah, he's still got the number on, so that's the original bike that he started the day on.
Yes, I think he's changed back. And he's taken a teammate for insurance.
But the interesting thing was, I thought I saw a group of riders just around the back involved in the team of cars, and that was possibly a group recovering from the descent and getting themselves back into this race. Always confusing on these stages like this when you get lots of groups shelled off the back and the riders starting to recover. A little bit of a thank you there from the team manager as he's got his teammate to nurse him back in. This is a guy who finished second in the Olympic Games in the mountain bike before deciding, I think I'll have a crack at road racing. He's rose to prominence because he actually beat Sylvain Chavanel in the French Time Trial Championships a couple of years ago. Chavanel, who's last week before the start of the Tour, won the French Time Trial Championships for the 5th and record time.
Yeah. Well, yes, and in his first Tour de France, Christophe Perrault finished 9th overall back in 2011. So a real all-round talent. Looks very cool, calm and collected. He's getting old now, but this is only his 3rd Tour de France because of all his other disciplines he's excelled in during his career. He won't have any problem getting back. He's being led back up to the field here. Just in front of him is his teammate and the man we saw him with earlier, Blel Kadri, who was also in action on the climbs today. Still sits equal 1st overall in the King of the Mountains until the next climb at least. Sky are just allowing Cannondale to set the pace. They're not interested in doing anything now. The selection's been made for the day. The next chance there can be a selection will be on the last climb, which comes 16 kilometers out. So that's just 12 kilometers to ride. 7 miles to the top of the climb. It's a 7-mile dash for the line.
Well, they're just sitting comfortably, Team Sky, there in the 2nd row, if you like, just allowing everybody else. This is not a tactical day for them. It's a day of making sure you keep your leader out of difficulty and out of problems, and looking to keep them at the front end of the main field, which is why they're sitting there nice and comfortably looking after Chris Froome and possibly Edvald Bosenhagen.
So we enter Ajaccio officially with 16 kilometers to go, and we top over the climb 12 kilometers or 7 miles from the finish on the steep climb. We'll see how that pans out very shortly, but these boys are certainly racing to it as fast as they can pedal. That's reflected in the time losses now by all of the sprinters who are just literally losing minutes now as the field continues to speed on. No favourites missing out for the overall victory in the Tour de France. They've made all the right moves. They've watched as it's gone as they continue to go on. BMC have got their man Philippe Gilbert in the white jersey just at the bottom of our picture there, and I think we'll expect to see Gilbert as a specialist at late moves to try and get away on his own. But I think 7 miles, 12 kilometres to the finish, Paul, after the climb, I think it's too far for a lone breakaway.
It's too far for one man on his own because you've got a rising headwind, rising crosswind coming across the peninsula here, which will make it very difficult for one man on his own to survive. But if a group of 10 or 15 riders gets clear over the summit of that small climb towards the end at 12 kilometres remaining or 7 miles of racing left, then there is a chance they could create the surprise.
Well, Peter Sagan will be very happy with the way life has dealt him so far. That's why he's put his teammate on the front, just to carry on a little bit. This looks like the Isolella Tower. We'll get a brief look at as well as Sagan continues in the main field, waiting for the move.
Another one of those Genoese towers. There are 85 of them around the island of Corsica. They were used for keeping an eye on marauding pirates coming into the area, and also used, in fact, to light fires on the top to warn them of invading armies. There you can see the Gulf of Ajaccio just in the background. That watchtower, by the way, is quite superb, at 11 meters in height, and it was actually restored from its destruction to be finished off with red bricks above the granite blocks.
And there in the distance is where we're aiming for today. But we don't come from this direction, by the way, because the guys haven't got their water wings on today. We come from out of those mountains, from the right of our picture to the left. And it won't be long now. Let's take a look then at the Giant Bike Stage Summit. It all began with 4 riders breaking away from the gun again today into the mountains. Red Lars Boehmer won the sprint along the way, got himself 20 points. The yellow jersey, Marcel Kittel and Mark Cavendish, the sprinters, both dropped on the big climb of the day. Pierre Roland tried to win that climb, which he did, but then they swept him up as well as they all regrouped, and the gap currently to the yellow jersey, a massive 8 minutes 20 seconds now. So we're looking for a candidate to fill the yellow jersey seat. And this is the peloton here, and they just went round a traffic circle. The Sky team chose the wrong way, and they got swept off as a whole team from the front of the bunch. So the men in black are now trying to get back through to the front. Well, let's get back to our race rides inside the race, TireRack.com, and we'll rejoin Steve Perino on his first tour. And believe me, Steve, everybody wants your job.
Yeah, can you believe they pay me for this? Well, you know, this morning I was talking to Charlie Veglius from Garmin, trying to get a sense of what tactics are going to play out today. And he said, are you going to use this before the race starts or during? Because I got 2 versions for you. The early version was we're going to go as hard as we can. But he said the version right around 142K into the race is that it is a very, very technical descent after the ascent here coming up very shortly. And he said that is definitely going to break up the field. That might actually be more decisive than the final sprint at the end.
Thanks very much indeed, Steve. Well, these boys know about this climb, because I tell you, the pace has gone on at the front now as they're all trying to hold lead position as they're spread right across the road. Pierre Roland's got himself into the middle as well, so they're all quite nervous. Well, as they race for the head of the peloton, the climb is called the Col de la Serra, the Côte de Celerio. It comes with about 12 kilometers to the finish, and earlier Steve Schlanger checked it out for us. This is what it's like.
This is the last climb at the end of an unusually hilly second stage at the Tour de France, and it could be the one moment that decides the stage. It's not a long climb, but it is very steep, and there's also wind on the climb as well. The head of the Garmin Sharp team, Jonathan Vaughters, told me that he believes this climb will not only split the group, but that the descent on the backside leading down to the finish is so tricky that could be equally as pivotal in determining the next overall leader of the Tour de France.
Thanks, Steve. Well, one thing's for sure, it will determine the next leader of the Tour, because the Maillot Jaune is no longer with this group. So they're working pretty hard to hold position right now. The ups and downs, the last climb sits just ahead of the race now. And not just the up, but the down as well, Paul. Everybody, ever since they announced the route, they always talked about the tricky descent off this climb.
Yeah, it is very precarious. The gradient itself will be a bit of a shock to some of the riders if they hadn't been out and checked it, because although in the race handbook it gives an indication of 8%, it's a lot steeper than that in certain portions of it. 20 kilometers to go officially. And now Team Sky take up the pacemaking at the front. We will see a battle, Phil, for this the foot of this climb, like we would see a battle for the finish of a stage, because there's a very big possibility that there will be a split in the main field. Cadel Evans, for one, doesn't want to lose any time in these early stages. Neither too does Chris Froome, who sits there in third position with that black flash and the white sunglasses. Looks calm and collected. He knows that once he rides away from the island of Corsica. They've got a very big rendezvous in Nice on Tuesday, and that, of course, is the team time trial.
Yeah, they've got to stay at the front here because of the descent. If there is a fall, then they're going to get caught to the back, and the clock will start counting. They're about 7 kilometres from that climb now, and that is why the pace is shot up noticeably. We're not too far away from Napoleon Bonaparte Airport here now, as we run gently around. There's the bay where we're headed to. Just on the edge of our picture is Ajaccio. And there's the runway of the Napoleon Bonaparte Airport as the riders stay just off the main road on that narrow little road on the right of the picture.
Yep, they're swinging back onto the large dual carriageway, which will charge into the centre of Ajaccio. They'll circumnavigate the town, taking and on board this little climb. That's the little climb that they will go over, just over to the far side, just behind the press room. That is the press room there. You can just see that yellow ship of the Corsican Sardinian ferries, which has hosted the press.
That's the floating ship.
All the way from Porto Vecchio.
That's right. The members of the press have actually floated the way around Corsica because that's their bed for the night on that ship, as well as doing all their work for the newspapers and journals. And that's where our car is parked right now, but it's a long way to the finish. It's 12 kilometres round the bay, and the race now trying to fight position as we start to head up towards that crucial climb. Just looking here now, well, Sky have repaired the damage done around about there because they've got the whole team back up, including Chris Froome in second place as they race shoulder to shoulder. Jens Voigt, his bike rocking and rolling as he tries to keep his teammates right up here in the action as well. Michael Shaw of BMC making sure Cadel Evans and TJ Van Garderen are not far away from the action. Absolutely crucial now. This is the race before the race finish as they race now to be first onto this rather nasty little climb. And they've got about 3 miles to go, which means we'll take a break. Rejoin us for the climb. Welcome back as we race to the finish of the second stage of the Tour de France today. We've just entered the finishing town of Ajaccio, but we're not at the finish yet by far. There's still 9 miles to race. These boys are racing flat out to be first onto the one little climb, which could decide the stage. And the Cadel Evans and TJ Van Garden's BMC squad have got control at the moment of the head of the field. They are absolutely flying. Well, just take a look at this, Paul. We've got Michael Shaw now taking control of the front. BMC are lining up. You're right what you've been saying about Andy Schleck. He's right there with the Radio Shack boys. Big test day for him in these early days of the Tour de France.
Yes, Côte de Solario is on the horizon. It's 1 kilometre long. Doesn't sound like very much, does it? But there's some very steep gradients. Nervousness is what is reigning over the front end of the main field currently as BMC try to look after their man, Cadel Evans, in the red and black jerseys. The black jerseys with the blue streaks down them, that is Team Sky. They're trying to look after Christopher Froome. Where's number 1? Finished second in the Tour de France last year. And you can also notice now, moving up through the middle, Orica Green Edge trying to place their riders comfortably at the front of the pack.
I have to say that Chris Froome has looked so cool and strong today. It would not surprise me to see this man go away on the climb. I don't think he'll plan to do it, but he's right in the launching pad position at the front here. Sits there, and Boysenhagen in second wheel as well. The Norwegian guy on Sky. Another man that could be an opportunist winner today, but there's so many of them, and they've got themselves in the position that they want to be in. There is this beautiful town of Ajaccio, the home, the birthplace of Napoleon Bonaparte, just a few months after French assumed control of this island.
About 1.5 kilometres now to go to the start of this climb, and it's going to be a rip-roaring ascent right from the very beginning. Bosenhagen will be looked after, I think, by the team because, you know, he's the kind of guy, he's currently sitting in about second position in that line of riders. Yep. Now, he's got the kind of acceleration that could hit them. 0.5 kilometre now till they hit the foot of this climb.
It's about 1/4 mile, I guess, as we're heading up. Slowly the road is kicking up a little bit. The people of Ajaccio, most of them, I think, are in town because it was a heck of a walk out to the finishing line. Some were offered the chance of a boat ride to the finishing line. Oh, and so they start now. They're swinging onto the climb, and they Sky, advantage Sky as Kirienka brings on Boysenhagen first. The back boys, you see, have to queue up. This is a real kick-up, and it is a tough one, and the crowd are there to watch it.
There's a little move on the left.
Thomas de Gent.
That's Thomas de Gent who's come out of the pack there, but look at the reaction again coming from Europe car on the dark green jersey.
Who else could it be but Tommy Vogler has tried again here as it's 1 kilometre to the top as it comes up, and there's a big move as they have to narrow right down here as they come up the climb. I don't think it is Tommy Vogler at the moment. He's come up. We'll catch him in a minute though, but he's joined Thomas de Gent. A podium finish in last year's Giro d'Italia. Sky are blocked off at the front. Other guys can't get round them just now. That's all going to change in a moment.
Well, in fact, they battled for the corner. That was the most important strategic part for these guys, to get around the corner nice and safely. Then all of a sudden, they've switched off. Cadel Evans is riding to the front end of the pack in that black and red jersey, but this is a very, very big move.
Well, as they continue on the climb here, these two won't be so heavily marked. They're saying it's Juan Antonio Fletcher and Cyril Gauthier who's come up. Gauthier is the 4th rider on that team today to put in an attack.
Well, there's a problem at the back here. This is what happens when you get to a steep gradient. In fact, I think Pierre Roland has got a problem there. He's being pushed by his teammates, and he's got himself back into the race. But he could lose a little bit of time here because of that incident.
Well, that's a real shame. And that was David de Villiers, the man who was on the attack all day, who just, I think, gave him a bike and pushed him back into the action in his first Tour de France. A mixed bag for David today.
Richie Porte is the man now steering Chris Froome to the summit of this climb. The crowd has certainly turned out here in Ajaccio to see the Tour de France come in for the first time in its 100th edition. Porte is not panicking at all. He's got Chris Froome, but behind Chris Froome you've got Cadel Evans.
The Australian on the front here now. They're offering just 10 seconds to the 2 escapers as they continue to climb. But these boys have hit it at such a speed. Chris Froome is in second wheel behind his friend, and his strong friend at that, Richie Porte.
Well, it was given at 10 seconds, but that is no longer a 10-second advantage. Before they get to the summit of this climb, they will have those 2 riders pulled back into the fold.
Gauthier continues to climb here. Cyril Gauthier, and boy, if anybody deserves to win the team, it's Europe car. They played all the cars today, that's for sure. Gauthier in his 4th Tour de France, trying to steal a stage. He's never won a stage, but you know, Sky is still looking strong. Richie Porte is just holding him at the distance, and as we've always said, Paul, I think one guy can't make it to the finish alone.
Impossible. There's a little acceleration there. It's Chris Froome who's taken up the responsibility here, and he's going to try and chase this man down. This is just a little show of defiance to everybody else in the Tour de France this afternoon that, yes, we at Team Sky are quite strong and quite ready.
Well, Froome, I told you early on, looked absolutely cool, and would he try to go alone? Well, he's put the launch in here. This would really be a psychological blow for the rest of the race favourites if he gets time here today. Richie Porte set the pace. Froome has seen his chance. I think it's Joaquim Rodriguez also in the mix at the main field.
Cadel Evans responding very quickly as well to this move. I think this is just a little show to sell to everybody in the Tour de France that he has got the form. Very nervous move. I'm not sure it's a sensible move to make on a descent like this, but Chris Froome is itching to try and get himself onto the attack. He said, I'm not going to ride a defensive race in this Tour de France, and a few seconds gathered here or there is always a good thing to do.
This is a very, very difficult descent. It's very, very twisty, and maybe Froome has decided he wants to see it for himself. Anything can happen back in that field. He's come off the apex of that corner, and Cyril Gauthier will not know who is chasing him just now. But if Froome contacts him, 2 against the rest is possible.
I'm not sure, Phil. I keep looking at these flags here. They seem to be rippling a lot more vigorously than they were in the early part of the stage. And once these riders... Little change of line there for Gauthier, and that's why you've got to be very careful Also, I think Chris Froome caught out a fraction by that as well.
I think Chris might have gone a little bit over to the left there because he's no longer in the chase. At the camera, and there he is in the distance. He lost ground there on Gautier on the descent, but they're coming off that descent now. Very shortly, they will swing onto the beach road, and there's no trees and no shelter with 10 kilometres to go.
Well, Froome, I think the better part of valor here would be to sit up and wait to the main field. He's made his statement, he's made his point, but I think now he just needs to think about getting safely to the finish. Gautier, I think, will get pulled up towards the end of this stage because there is a long ride of 10 kilometres, which is going to take about 12 minutes, and he's got a strong and rising headwind.
Well, Saxo Bank are the boys of Albert Contador who are launching the counter-attack after Chris Froome. And it's a long way back down that group to Peter Sagan, so he may not be coming good today. But Cyril Gautier, in his 4th Tour de France, is trying to steal the show. Now, Chris Froome, you're right. He's come down the mountain safely. Job done for him today. He's going to finish alongside the stars. And he's now rejoined by the peloton.
Cadel Evans there on the left-hand side in the red and black jersey of Team BMC.
Well, Cadel Evans is the man that's neutralised the race as well at the front. They're not going to be too concerned about Cyril Gautier getting away from them right now. As we look down from the helicopters now, it's just the lone Frenchman, Cyril Gautier, and that's not the place to run at that moment in time, as the riders just look a little bit stunned by that as they all come back together. Well, that's a crazy move. That looks like Peter Sagan there as he's up at the front looking across thinking, what on earth are you doing? He's never afraid to do his share of work, even if he is the fastest sprinter in the race.
Well, early on in this season, there's a one-day race in Belgium called Gent-Wevelgem, and Peter Sagan was in the breakaway there. Everybody expected him to wait for the sprint finish towards the end, and he jumped them and won that race on his own. Gautier's bringing up a crosswind now, that indication, a new graphic we've pulled in this year, which indicates that the wind is coming from his right-hand shoulder, and it will be buffeting him. And I tell you, looking at the flags here, that's quite a strong wind rising at 20 kilometres an hour.
Which is 12 miles an hour. That's a pretty tough wind for him to be riding into towards the finish. It's slightly off his shoulder at the moment, so there's still chance to split this field up here. Only 8 kilometres or 5 miles left to race. Froome played a card, but I think it was one to be safe rather than to try and break away for the finish.
I would guess, Phil, that it's all going to come back together, because I cannot believe that one man on his own is going to survive off the front end of this charging main field. We are now approaching speeds very close to 40 miles an hour on the run in towards the finish. We're inside of 5 miles to go. His advantage just 6 seconds. This is a man who has been to the Tour de France before. He rode back in 2010 and 11. But at the moment, he's trying to create a little bit of a surprise. But look at the line of riders. The gaps are starting to appear, and everybody realizes it's going to be a complicated calculation to figure out who is going to be the new overall leader of this bike race. It's pretty much all over now, bar the shouting.
Well, it doesn't necessarily go to the winner today. If they're all together, there's got to be an actual timed gap for an automatic claim on the yellow jersey. Otherwise, it's count back on positions finished in the peloton yesterday. Well, they've caught him at just on 7 kilometres from the finish as they all come back together. And there's the counter-attack by Sylvain Chavanel, and that is Mark Cavendish's team.
It looks to me like that was Nicky Terpstra, actually. They've both got red, white and blue bands, and this is the man who attacked on the run-in towards the finish yesterday, the big Dutchman.
No, they're saying it's Chavanel as he starts the move. He's settled into the move. Well, we'll see when we catch his number. As he looks to me as though they are the Dutch colours on him rather than the French colours, but we'll see when he sat up anyway, as they all come back together again. But he wants this little group to start working. As we said earlier, small group could slip the field.
Well, they've got 6, 7 riders now starting to form at the front, but who's going to try and control the front end of the main field? Well, it's the team of Peter Sagan, obviously, the lime green jerseys of Cannondale.
He's got control again at the front. There's these riders now, 6 of them, try to get it together, and 6 different teams as well. That would be interesting. That's 6 teams that won't be chasing back there. Well, that's a little bit of an encouraging move, that, rather than a handsling, so there'll be no penalty for that.
Also getting there, Juan Antonio Fletcher. The advantage of that leading group now is only 5 seconds over the front end of the main field, and we're looking at 6 kilometres to go to the finish.
Well, Sylvain Chavanel, 34 today, as he tries a little move here and continues to drive. Sorry about the pictures, but that will go better very, very shortly. That pack are massing behind because we're closing in on the finish, and what sprinters are there are going to have to decide what they want to do about it.
Well, they'll all be very, very concerned about the presence of Peter Sagan in that group, but it's now up to his team to get themselves organised and try and pull back this leading group of riders. Fletcher is the rider in the dark blue jersey there in 4th position. He was the man who started the move on the slopes of that climb. He seems to have recovered now somewhat and got himself into what is a very interesting move.
With more or less move away from the port now, out into open countryside here. They're going to catch the full force of the wind coming across the bay. Just on looking for the 5 kilometres to go.
Well, Jan Bakelants is the rider who's got himself in there from Team Radio Shack just over on the left-hand side, and they are starting to extend their advantage. There's no help coming for Cannondale, and it may well be that it could be the birthday boy on the front here, Sylvain Chavanel, who could get himself the victory. 5 kilometres to go.
Well, the rider from Euskadi 39 is Sozi Isagir, who's in his first Tour de France, I think, as he has now joined into this breakaway. He's a workhorse. He's not the sort of man you would expect. But look at this now. Cannondale trying to pick up the pace again. They're beginning to feel they might be losing grip on this one inside the 5 kilometres to go marker.
Well, every one of these riders must now realise and understand they have to work together if they want to break the stranglehold of the main field. Jakob Fuglsang is the rider to get in there from Team Astana. Mori has got in there from Lampre, and Juan Antonio Fletcher just sitting on the back there in that dark blue jersey. Well, he's come very smartly to the front. They are prizing a gap between themselves and the main field.
Manuela Mori is the other rider who's got into this move, another first-time Tour man at 4.3 kilometres to go. Now, as they come down to the last 4 kilometres, let's quickly go back out to TireRack.com inside the race with Steve Perino. And there's a dog on the course.
Well, Phil, it's interesting. I was just about to tell you that it's not a headwind we're dealing with, it's a tailwind, and in the meantime, it's now a headwind about 5 miles an hour. But I can also tell you that Peter Sagan has lost 2 of his teammates on that climb, so the horsepower of his lead out is down a little bit as they approach the finish.
Thanks, Steve. Well, we've had a few moments here because a dog ran in between break and bunch. Unfortunately, the dog ran off the road in front of the riders. That could have been a disaster. Well, how often do we see that with people and the dog getting loose? It's a little Jack Russell, I think they call it, and it's just run out on the road. And when the owner tried to pick it up, the race was on them, and thank heavens the dog got out of the way. That was a terrible few heartbeats there. Well, Sylvain Chavanel trying to get a perfect birthday present here as he pushes on the pace. Few deep breaths. It all happens on the Tour de France, Paul, doesn't it? As Chavanel tries to get a birthday present, the dog tries to bring the race down.
Well, fortunately, the dog realised how quickly those guys were coming at him and scuttled into the side of the road there, but that's Bakelants wriggling his wrist there. Mori is the rider in the pink jersey coming forward. Juan Antonio Fletcher. Hard to pick a winner from this group. You know, Sylvain Chavanel won a stage of Paris-Nice in the early part of this year in the sprint, so he must be wondering whether it's going to be a big birthday present for him. That's a big gap there, looking down, Phil.
Well, it is, and you know, there's a lot of firepower been lost now because some of the Cannondale riders have been dropped in this chase, so Sagan is going to have to just work it out what he can do for himself here. They're now saying this is Irizar from Radio Shack up in the breakaway rather than Jan Bakelants.
Well, the reason Garmin have come to the front there, Phil, is because if they can get their man David Miller in a good position at the front end of the peloton, he would be the new yellow jersey at the end of the day. But if this breakaway succeeds off the front, it's one of those 6 guys in that leading group of 6 who will be the new yellow jersey holder tonight.
6 riders clear, 2.5 kilometres to go, and they are working so well together now that it's going to be difficult to bridge the gap. The firepower of Cannondale has been dampened down because they've lost riders in this race as they try now to desperately close this down. And rider Hejerdal of Garmin Sharp, who said he's fed up of falling off the bike, he crashed again yesterday, is trying to close this gap down for Garmin.
Well, Sylvain Chavanel, look at that face on the man at the front in the pale blue jersey there. He realizes this is one of those special chances you get during a career. They're inside of 2 kilometers, 1.5 miles to go to the finish line as they start the sweeping bends. But now's not the time to stop cooperating. You've got 10 seconds, but 10 seconds is nothing at speeds like this. It's down to 8 seconds advantage now.
1.8 kilometers, 10-second the gap. The bunch are throwing everything they've got at that breakaway now. We always said a single man couldn't survive. A small group could.
Up into 6th position in the main field. I saw the shadow of the Slovakian champion Peter Sagan sitting there, calm and collected as he could be, hoping for the moment that this group would come together. It's now down to 6 seconds the advantage, and Bakelants now starts to make the move.
I think it's Markel Irizar has got into the group. They've corrected it, but either way, he's on Radio Shack, and it won't matter, I don't think, because although he's making his move to go at 1.4 kilometers, it could still be a sprint from this group. Chavanel looks over his shoulders. The breakaway in total disarray. What strength they've got left, they've got to use now.
Well, it is Irizar who looks over his shoulder, but that breakaway is now falling apart. That means the impetus and the organisation has come under 1 kilometre to go to the finish.
Markel Irizar, 1,000 metres from the stage win in the Tour de France, and that would be the biggest result of his career. He's only ridden the Tour de France once before, 2 years ago. Can he hang on and get a great victory for Radio Shack, or are they going to pounce because they've caught the rest of the breakaway? No longer a happy birthday for Sylvain Chavanel, but he played his cards. But, you know, I think Irizar might well steal this one. His first ever Tour de France victory if he can make it to the line.
Well, he comes around that corner and he's looking every time he peeks around the next corner. He wants to know whether he's going to get inside of the finishing line. He hasn't got very much further to go. The main field are boring down upon him. This guy has just got to concentrate. Don't look backwards now. Keep on.
Absolutely. 300 metres to go. He hasn't actually crossed the line first in a race since August 2010. And he's still got a kick on here as he goes, but the sprinters are coming. And it's Orica Greenedge who are trying to get up Simon Clark to the line here as Simon Gerrans has led him out. And Dal Limpy, I think it is, but he's won. He's got it across the line. Markel Irizar from Team Radio Shack has just won the stage of the Tour de France with a masterly display of defiance.
Unbelievable. He got himself into that breakaway move there. The main field were boring down upon him, and I wonder if they're going to give him a time gap in that sprint there,
Absolutely.
Phil, because it was looks to me as if he may well have just had a second. If he has a 1 second advantage over the peloton in the photo finish, he'll also be the yellow jersey. Bear in mind, this is also a rider who back in 2002 recovered from testicular cancer. What a story.
Absolutely, and he has crossed the line in first place. Now, is there a time gap? I think they have to give him 1 second, most certainly. So that will be enough to give him the next maillot jaune. He can't believe it, and I do not believe him. Terrific. Terrific, and what a result too for the American Radio Shack team, that really is. Well, hey, they're now saying, and correcting it, it's now Jan Bakelants. Well, I don't know, because they came up with Bakelants, they changed it to Irizar. I never did see his number, but Jan Bakelants is having his best season too. He's recently become a national champion, and Peter Sagan bringing home the sprint with Kwiatkowski and Chimele completing. There was 1 or 2 sprinters left there in the end. So we'll wait and see. In the final confirmation there, we should have stuck with our guns when we saw Jan Bakelants. That's Andy Schlechter congratulating him, and he'll be very pleased with his performance as well today, finishing in that front group. Very tricky stage. And for the big riders in the Tour de France who are aiming for that final yellow jersey, today was a day not to make mistakes. They weren't too worried about winning the day, but they certainly didn't want to lose time. And Peter Sagan swept up from the back of the group there for second, but unfortunately wasn't able to get up to Bakelants for the win. So we've got confirmation now that it is indeed Jan Bakelants. We're just wondering if they were wearing the right numbers today, for the computers don't usually make mistakes like that. but we'll see. Let's have a look at how the result ran in the end. Jan Bekelants getting the victory. Sagan second at 1 second, crucial. Bekelants is the next leader. Kwiatkowski of Amiga Pharma Quickstep made up for Nomar Cavendish in third. Chimele of Lamprey fourth, and Boysenhagen for Sky in fifth. So the main group all placed at 1 second there. Looking further down, Daryl Impey, well led out by Simon Gerrans, crossed the line in 8th. Top 10 completed by Vacansoleil's Sergei Lagoutin. Still out on the highway, approximately 6 miles behind that sprint, is coming in through Ajaccio. We'll see him finish though. We'll take a break. He'll be home in about 6 or 7 minutes time, and we'll be then probably busy with the podiums. Jan Bekelants was the name. He'll kill me for not remembering. We'll see you back here in a moment.
The Tour de France on NBCSN is brought to you by Bacardi. Bacardi reminds you to enjoy the race and party together responsibly. By X Endurance, the greatest athletic discovery since tennis shoes.
Welcome back. Well, we've just seen a rare victory for Jan Bekelants, the first victory he's ever had as a professional cyclist. He was winner once of the Liège-Bastogne-Liège under 23 classic race, and that earned him a pro contract. But boy, he took his chance well today. Let's have a look at it as he went forward with that breakaway of 6, and then he slipped them just before the line. The peloton distracted by catching up the remnants of the breakaway. He just kept going all the way to the line. Peter Sagan in third place here in green was lining himself up to steal second. He was hoping they would have caught them and he could have gone for the stage win. Nonetheless, he's done well today in the green jersey points competition. But for this man, Jan Bekelants, his first ever victory as a pro since he turned professional in 2009. Hung on well. He's having a great season. Third in the Tour of Luxembourg, third in his National Road Championships last Sunday. I bet he never thought then this Sunday he'd be winning a stage of the Tour de France. And the 1 second time gap means he's also riding in Corsica in yellow tomorrow. Cannot believe it. He followed the right wheels today for sure. And a big result for team at Radio Shack from the US as well. Let's have a look first of all at the stage results. Then Bekelants, first he gets the 1 second advantage over Sagan. Michael Kwiatkowski, David Chimele and Edward Boysenhagen, they are sprinters that survived the passage of the mountains. Julian Simon in 6th place and another sprinter, Gavazzi, in 7th. Also Daryl Impey of Orica Greenwich. He's the only South African rider in the race, by the way. Got a good 8th place there. And that 13th place by David Miller will stand him in good stead. On countback, he should be in 2nd place overall in the race now, because everybody apart from the winner all go on countback to their positions yesterday added to what they got today. Philippe Gilbert, we thought he would have a go. It never came in the end. He crossed the line in 18th place, the world champion. He still continues to look for his first win as a champion of the world. There's the beautiful port here of Ajaccio. We're right round the headland there. We raced across the town and went out on the other side and finished out on the seafront where the wind was coming in off the bay itself. Well, that's taken a lot of pressure off Radio Shack because they've been coming good, and in the last week they had a clutch of national time trial and road race champions on their team. And now they've got on stage 2 a stage win in the Tour de France. So they'll be feeling pretty happy with themselves right now. It's been a beautiful second day of racing, I have to say, here on the Tour de France. There's another group coming in. Remember, these are live pictures. It's 12 minutes now since the winner went across the line. These boys in no hurry. They're well inside the elimination time. It should be okay for them all today. But 12 minutes has gone by. We have not seen the yellow jersey. Andre Greipel is here, centre right in that white jersey. He's one sprinter that's come in, just looking quite casual. Happy to finish, but not interested in being first over the line if he's not sprinting for the win. He won't be surprised when he hears Peter Sagan has scored well in the green points competition today. This is the dash to the line at 1 kilometre to go. as Jan Bekelans took his chance. He sensed the catch, and he decided if he didn't go, then he would have nothing, as the peloton were cracking along at quite a pace here, and the breakaway was also cracking up. For a little moment, I thought he would still get caught, and then as he reached the 300 meters to go marker, I thought they're not going to catch this man. He's hung on well. He's going for the victory, and he's going to take it. The sprinters were trying to get in position for the sprint, so there's nobody left to chase down the lone escaper. And so the impetus was lost, and Jan Bekelans living the best moment of his life. At this point, he didn't dare look over his shoulder. It was all about getting to the line, I think. Couldn't believe it. A week ago, third in his national championships of Belgium. A week later, a stage winner in the Tour de France, and even better, this gap between him and the race behind was 1 second, and that was enough for a yellow jersey as well. We'll see him shortly pull that on. Boy, those sprinters were really tight up on him at the line too. Back to live pictures, as maybe this is the yellow jersey group now coming in, because we've got quite a bit of time has passed by. There's a lot of Orica Green Edge riders in here. There's the yellow jersey. 14 minutes and counting. Well, if you're going to lose the lead, lose it well, and that's what's happened today. Once he cracked on the long climb of the Col de Vitzvona, it was all over. Tony Martin's here, which indicates to me that perhaps Mark Cavendish is now here as well, because Martin was riding back with Mark Cavendish, with a lot of Cavendish's teammates. At least he's got through the day, Tony Martin, because he was quite seriously hurt last night and was in hospital. But he's got through the day, and hopefully he'll get stronger as the race goes on. Fun and games out in the water. There's our press room in the ship. Now let's see if we can listen in on Peter Sagan, who's giving an interview.
So can you tell me how do you feel about what happened today?
I feel good, but it was very difficult for to control this stage. The sprinters, it was how say English? It was cut from the group, no? And then the other team pull on the front for not come again in the group, the sprinters, and then after the last climb before the finish, it was go on the front the breakaway in the 6 guys, and then the group it was a little bit not working on the front for take, but for luck the last 500 meters we take the 5 guys, but 1 guy is won the stage now. But then I was...
Yes, well, as that goes on, we can hear the music. This is the man who won the day. Peter Sagan virtually said he couldn't control the race today. He'd lost his teammates towards the end, and that meant he couldn't catch the last man standing. This man, Jan Bekelans. Best moment of his life as a professional, and he now steps on at the podium in front of the crowd here in Ajaccio. Bernardino in the shirt to the right, applauding him. He'll appreciate the way this man won this race, because Eno himself was such an aggressive bike rider. Just asking for the applause of the crowd there. Daniel Manjas, as the yellow jersey, is up the home straight, I think. Yes, there he is in the centre of that group, as he comes in 17 minutes behind today. That's a lot of time lost. It doesn't really matter, because he is a sprinter. He didn't start the race having any ambition of winning the Tour de France, and he did do something he never expected. That was lead the Tour de France, albeit for 1 day. But 17 minutes is a long way behind. And Mark Cavendish also in that group, so they did regroup on the run-in towards the end. And so it's not uncommon to see the winner of the stage, usually in a real mountain stage though, take on the first prize while the others are still coming in, and to take on the maillot jaune now, can't believe it. Proudest moment of his life for sure, and a great moment for Radio Shack. Well, it's been that sort of tour, really, hasn't it, Paul? Yesterday it was a man we didn't expect because there are faster sprinters than Marcel Kittel. He comes in today 17 minutes back. I saw Cavendish in that group as well. Now this man's turn to celebrate. 1 week after finishing third in his Belgian National Championship, he's now wearing the yellow jersey in the Tour de France.
His first ever professional victory to boot, which is a very important day for him, as well as taking away that yellow jersey too.
Yeah. These are the Michelob Ultra overall standings. So Bakelands, by that 1 second advantage in the sprint, gets in ahead of David Miller from Garmin Sharp. He's a Scot, but he's on an American team. He's in the second slot overall. Julian Simon of Sochazun, he's in third. Dallalimpi fourth. Edward Boysenhagen in fifth place. Some of these are sprinters, some aren't. Cadel Evans, though, interestingly, Paul, is up into 10th place overall, so he's paying attention on these big finishes at the moment.
He's looking good, he's being very alert, he's keeping himself at the front and out of danger.
All right, well, let's remind ourselves where we go tomorrow with our Geico stage map. Remember, it's our last day here in Corsica as we head up to Calvi tomorrow from Ajaccio. And this is an interesting route, but the most crucial thing is, Paul, the second category hill before the finish.
Yes, again, the organisation putting a slight sting in the tail because despite following the coastline for the majority of the day, it's once they get up towards the final climb. And again, a nasty little col at around about 12 kilometres to go to the finish.
It'll be a tough one tomorrow, though. It is off to the right of our picture. The undulations continue. It is going to be a beautiful route tomorrow. We hug the coastline for much of the day on the west side of this incredibly pretty island. And this is where we say goodbye to the island of Corsica. Now, don't forget, tune in tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern for Tour de France Prime Time on NBCSN. Don't forget, plenty of interviews to come. Haven't had time to get them to you on our live show. And we'll, of course, have our Ask Bob segment and race analysts. Now, remember that tomorrow we bring you the 100th edition of the Tour de France Stage 3 at 6:30 Eastern. And don't forget, it'll be a big day of action tomorrow. For a full schedule and for all race highlights, don't forget, log on to NBCsports.com. Well, it was a terrific ride today by Jan Bakelands. We had a terrific ride yesterday by the Maillot Jaune of Marcel Kittel. New man in yellow tomorrow, so well done, Jan Bakelands. Proudest moment of his life. And for maybe the sprinters will have to take a rest for a couple of days now. It's been an entertaining day of racing, and we've seen a lot of interesting moves, and it's only stage 2 of the Tour de France. We'll be here 4 Sundays from now, and I certainly hope you will be as well. For Paul Sherwin and our entire crew, I'm Phil Liggett saying until tomorrow, goodbye.
Thank you for watching this